Hey, folks, welcome to this week's episode and live recording of What's Bruin. I am your host, Chris Nozick, joined by my co host, the one and only Dom Bomb Dropper himself, Dominic Pagano. Dom, how are you? It's only been a couple days since our last show, and not much has gone down in the world of hockey, but this is where you shine brightest. Today, we are all about the prospects in the Bruin system. How are you?
Well, I have to apologize for the sniffles you guys are going to hear. I caught something uh, today, but we're going to fight through it. Other than that, doing great. How about you, Chris?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to have Sight back. In case some people missed it, we did that one show where you had to do and run all the comments and questions and everything because I just couldn't see 3 feet in front of my face. But we're getting back on the health train here, and one day at a time. But we are going to go through. You did a 4-part series going through the Bruins prospect pool. This is what everybody loves, and we're going to start with number one, who you ranked, and we're going to go all the way down the list here. Probably going to be a long episode. Normally we try to keep it to about an hour, but we're gonna go as long as you guys want to let us. As long as you guys have questions, we want to answer them. But we will at some point have to end. But like I said, we're going to start at the top. We're going to work all the way down. We'll work through all of the questions. And not much has happened. I mean, we haven't had a game. Do you have anywhere else that you want to start before we just dive right in?
No, all the general managers are busy at the combine this week, preparing for the draft. Obviously, the hockey world is busy with the Stanley Cup Finals beginning. So, I know there were reports out there of New Jersey doing something before the weekend. Um, I'm not expecting anything to really start until next week. Um, like I said, the GMs are concentrating on the draft. Not so much Don Sweeney because he only has 3 picks, and the players he'd be looking at wouldn't be at the combine anyway because they only invite 100 or so.
Yeah, he probably has like 3 names where if he gets that number 10 pick overall or a higher for a pick in the first round by making a trade, probably Omar, but that's beside the point. That's not what we're talking about here. But if he does get a higher pick, he's probably got 3 guys where he goes, I'll take whichever one's available.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Simple as that. So
for folks who want to follow along, as I mentioned, you did a 4-part series. So if you want to follow along, we'll pull up some player cards and then we'll talk about them and we'll dive into any questions. But Dom.Hockey, you can find the 4-part series with everything we're going over. You got some awesome graphics in there, considering the fact that I'm guessing they were all done in Excel, which is, awesome. But yeah, let's dive right in. We're gonna start with
well, before we do,
yeah.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the public rankings.
Sure.
Because everybody is always up in arms about the Bruins always being ranked so low, 27th, 28th, 30th, 32nd. In fairness, the guys that put these together put in a lot of work. I know how much work it took just for me to get the Bruins prospects done, and we all know that the Bruins have been competitive. They've traded first round picks, so they lack that higher end talent. Excuse me. So that's why they're consistently ranked so low. However, when you're doing an overall ranking, that's basically what you're looking at. Who's got the best prospects? I will tell you what. It takes 20 different types of players to make up a hockey team.
Yep.
You can't have 18 David Pasternaks. It just wouldn't work. It would not work. But I will say this: the Bruins have done so well at the lower tier guys that I would put the prospects expected to be in the bottom six against anybody else's in the NHL.
That would make sense. Yeah.
And I would not waver 1 second to say the Bruins are doing really well there. So,
Yeah.
Trevor Kutar, for an example, we'll get to him. Riley Duran, like those types of guys.
Yeah. And to your point, their average draft position over the last 10 years has been like 50 something for their first pick. Between the picks he's dealt away and the fact that they've been picking at, 28, 29, 27, like and I'll give our listeners credit because I don't think we've gotten a lot of people over these episodes to kind of come in and chirp the farm system overall, because any educated hockey person to some degree also knows that the more competitive you are at the pro level, the lower that pick is. If you have the 32nd ranked system, but you're picking 32 overall every year, that also means, checks notes, you're winning the cup almost every year.
Let me say this. The Athletic did a really nice article last year, I believe it was. And there are others that have done the same thing. For the 30th ranked or 29th ranked prospect pool, the fourth best team drafting in the NHL since 2007 has been the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I think, and everybody's argument to say, they suck at drafting is pushing 10 years old now. So you got to get over it at some point. We do have a question from Andrew here. What would you like that Lochmellis kid to improve on next year in the NCAA? He's referring to, obviously, Dan Lochmellis, the number 119 overall in the fourth round draft selection in 2022.
Let's stop right there because we discussed this beforehand. We're going to get questions going all over the place. When we get to Don's Lochmellis, we'll take Don's Lochmellis questions.
Yep.
We're not to him
Andrew.
yet.
Don't worry, Andrew. I'll pull this one right back up.
So keep your questions to the player that is currently being discussed. And that way it'll make it a lot smoother for everybody. We won't miss any questions and we won't be jumping all over the place.
Yeah, and it's fun sometimes to jump around, Andrew, but I'll pull this one right back up and we'll come back to this one once we get to Lochmellis. It's a great question. I love the question and I'm looking forward to going over it. But to his point, we're gonna keep a little bit of structure here, just so we get through everybody, because we want to answer all of the questions that do come up. And I think starting at the top is going to be a very dynamic way to start. Do you want to dive right in? You ready?
Let's go.
All right. So here's your player card on the number one ranked prospect in the system. It is winger Fabian Lysell. He was the 21st overall pick a couple years ago, back in 2021. He is playing for the Providence Bruins right now. And according to you, his NHL upside is a second line right winger who can score and make plays and play on the top PP unit. So just because we're going to have some conversation about him here, want to walk us through how you come to that conclusion?
Well, first and foremost, if everybody goes to the fourth article that I wrote in the series, there's a sample of what I use to rate the players, and that is the actual form that is used by NHL Central Scouting on grading a player. And that's what I use. Now, certainly, Lysell has all the tools necessary to be a second line NHL player. One general manager once told me is if a kid can skate and a kid can think, he can play in the NHL. and Fabian Lysell can do that. The problem is if you put that um, card back up, Chris, is when it comes to the competitiveness. 7 is just barely above average. You know, a guy like Fabian Lysell, you want to see him at a 9 or 10.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, we all know he was called out by Coach Ryan Mougenel during the season, and he came back, and yeah, that compete level went up, but now he's got to maintain it to be the player he is capable of being. And I will say this, and I've maintained it over the last 2 years, even when he was having his struggles, uh, that with full potential reached, he was still ahead of Mason Lohrei, as far as I'm concerned. And you know what I think of Mason Lohrei.
Yeah. At least I do. But a lot of our viewers know as well. So
yeah, but just because I'm saying it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's up to the player. And we're going to have a few cases like this where we discuss different players where that compete level is not where it should be, and if it's not, they're not going to reach their full potential. Um, so you know, I'm confident that he can be a second line right winger behind David Pastrnak for a long time, a long time. It's just how much does he want it now? I mean, you and I have talked a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. The thing we'd like to see most from him this off season is to stay in Boston and work out here. Forget going home. Forget going to mess around with his friends all summer. Stay here.
yeah, he definitely has some work to do in his game. But I will say, at least in my opinion, from everything that I've learned about him and stuff like that, a lot of it is mental and what can he do on the ice and stuff like that. Real quick, appreciate the thumbs up, Andrew. After we covered everything, Kevin's jumping in. What's Bruin? And he says, "I'll do my best not to piss Dom off tonight." So
Oh, he always does.
sure. Yeah. So I definitely don't disagree. Fabian Lysell is one of the higher end people in the system. The physicality does worry me a little bit as far as can he get a little bit more physical with his game. But he's a scoring guy, not a bottom six forward. So I'm not overly worried about that. I love the fact that he's got a good shot rating, a good IQ rating, moves the puck well. I mean, this is the kind of guy that we've talked about the heart and the wanna be there kind of thing, and that's the part that I still question. I mean, is that, if I remember correctly, that's what caused him to fall to the Bruins in the draft in the first place. So. Once he got called out from Mougenel, we did see a bit of a turnaround. We also saw that same kind of turnaround, the maturity factor, hit other guys when they get traded. So, it's not impossible to change. We just, people were complaining last year because he didn't get a call up, and, Merkulov got a call up, and so on and so forth. But first of all, you weren't going to call Lysell up to play in a bottom six role. That's not his game.
No.
Period. And when you had Jake DeBrusk playing for the most part as well as he was, there was no need to call up Fabian Lysell because you weren't going to play him.
Yeah.
And that's the attitude, that ho-hum kind of attitude that you don't want to reward with a call-up when the player truly hasn't earned it off the ice. And admittedly, last year when I was at development camp, looking at Fabian Lysell, he was coming off the injury, so some of it was trying to find the line of, is he kind of holding back a little bit, because I'm pretty sure it was the concussion that ended his season the year before. So it was a matter of, is he going lightly because of the concussion, or how much of it is the I'm too good to be here kind of attitude. So we'll have to see. Kevin does say, I would really like to see Liesel crack the lineup and play a third line with Coyle. Coyle has underrated playmaking skills in his possession, can draw players to him, opening up Liesel for chances.
He's got to earn it, Kevin.
Yeah.
He's got to earn it. Nobody's being gifted a spot on the Bruins roster because of draft pedigree or where they were selected or anything. Fabian Liesel has to go in and pull a Matthew Poitras in September. Barring that, he's not going to make the team.
Yeah. I mean, he has the talent to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of does he have the mentality to do it? And Kevin does agree with that. Of course, I'm just saying that's where I want to see if he earns it. Yep, absolutely. And that's kind of the carrot that you dangle for him and see if he's willing to get it and fight for it. You ready to go on to number 2 here?
Well, I'd like to say it would have been nice to see it the full season.
Yeah.
Out of Liesel, not just after he was called up, because if you saw for a full season and you knew he was turning the corner, you could possibly let Jake DeBrusk walk away because you have a right winger to come in. You don't have to go out and get Getzel or a Tyler Toffoli because you have Liesel ready to walk in. So I don't want to say it was a year of lost development with Liesel, but it was a lost year because now he's an unknown. And he's not just an unknown to the Bruins. He's an unknown to everybody in the NHL right now because you just don't know what you're going to get from him.
Right. And so that when you have an unknown commodity like that and a player as talented as that, the trade value just is not very high, if existent in most cases. So, you're not, Liesel is the kind of player that you can put in a package to trade if you're going after something specific. For instance, if New Jersey says that they'll do Allmark and Liesel for the 10th overall pick, but you're now asking for a little bit more back because, there's a conditional pick now coming your way in that deal because he does have that upside. So Jerry does have a good question. He mentions the 4-part article as well. He said you wrote in your recent 4-part, and then again tonight you mentioned it, that you hope Liesel stays in town. What are your thoughts, if any, on what his plans are? Do we know if he's planning on staying in town or not?
No, I don't. I have no clue.
I hope he does, because I think being able to stay in town, work with the guys here in town, will show that level of commitment, that level of compete to try to make the roster. Now, I'm not saying the guy can't go home for a month,
or a couple of weeks. But I mean, you look at last offseason, how long did Boston cameras follow him around Sweden with PJ Axelson doing this and that and the other thing when he should be training?
Yeah. And he went over his workout routine in that, and it was not extensive.
No.
It was like, an hour and a half a day, and then, he had the shot pad out in his backyard that he might be on for another hour, and it's like, okay. And not everybody is Nathan McKinnon, but like, this is your job. How much effort are you actually really putting into it? So there's just some questions in that regard. I don't discount him entirely. I just know that as far as there's questions, and while his ceiling is still the highest, his trade value is not the highest right now. His on ice value is not the highest. You got to give him a chance to earn it back. But the ball's in his court right now.
Exactly.
So let's see. Let me get our cards back pulled up here, and we can, unless there's any final trickling questions about Liesel, I can jump back to him. But I'm going to pull up player card number 2 here. Your number 2 overall rated prospect is Georgi Merkulov. Center, also can kick over to the wing. He was an undrafted free agent signing, so we didn't draft him. He's from Russia, compete level of 8. Your upside is middle 6 center who can provide secondary scoring and anchor the second power play unit. He's a left shot, and he's been playing down in Providence. He's making a name for himself down there. You have a shot ranking of a 9, which has made a lot of people be impressed by him. Again, his lowest rankings here on your player card are the penalty kill and the physicality. So as far as Georgy Merkulov, what more do you want to add, or can you add for us? He's 23 years old right now. So when do you think we'll see him?
Well, first of all, let me explain what I mean when I say a middle sixer or a bottom sixer. So there's different tiers. You have a first liner, that's the top tier. Then you have the top 6, which is a high end second liner, low end first liner. Then you have your second line. Then your middle 6, which is a high end third liner or a low end second liner, and then so on. So I Merkulov has the skills to be a second line player, but I'm convinced because of that shot where we saw it at a 9 that he's a winger as opposed to a center.
Obviously, go ahead.
But that's not where they're developing him at. They've strictly played him pretty much always down the middle. His competitiveness is good. He's not afraid of competing. People are upset because he wasn't given a legit shot when he was called up last year with the top 6. You know what? He wasn't ready to fill in the top 6.
He wasn't even ready to fill in on the third line.
No, he was there to fill in for Matthew Poitras, who was playing third line center at the time.
Right. They literally called him up with the directive of Poitras out for a couple weeks. This is your chance to show us that you're ready to take over what he's doing, to take the same chance he got, and you are ready for it as well.
No, and by the 4th game, he was moved down to the 4th line.
Right.
Okay.
And you still didn't have Poitras coming back. That's why he played the 4th game. But once it was established, okay, we're 4 games in, you're not quite ready. That's okay. Go back down, work on your game, and we'll see where you're at the next time we need someone.
And we all know that Bruins players are better when they're called up the second and third time.
Yeah, look at Mason Lohrei.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And last year he posted obviously Merkulov posted 65 points in 67 games with Providence. What I like best about it, though, 30 goals, 35 assists. He's an even, he plays an even game. He doesn't worry about whether it's his goal or someone else's goal. If there's an opportunity for a scoring chance, he is all over it. Now, This is someone I think, like you said, based on his shot at the NHL level, he's going to be more successful on the wing. Now, I understand why they're trying. I understand why they're trying to keep him at center. Look at your center depth on this roster. You need centers. And if you can get some kinks out of his game at the center position, then that's not a bad thing. But, let him play where kind of the game dictates. 2 years ago in Providence, 55 points in 65 games. So you're seeing a little bit of an elevation there. And obviously he came from Ohio State where he played really, really well. Just to wrap up on the Liesel comments real quick. Just a couple trickled in. Jerry said, hope he sticks around. I agree. It would be good for him to be working inside the system. I'm rooting for the kid. And then Kevin said, it's my opinion for a while that the Beyond the B show and all these other things they do are distracting. They may not be distracted, but I don't know. I understand why they do those types of things for the content, get people excited about the prospects and stuff. But is it a little overblown? Maybe they put a little more emphasis on certain things that make him not look the best. But I don't know. I feel like what I saw in camp kind of reflected that too. So I'm very excited and looking forward to seeing what we see from him this development camp, just to see how that may have changed since he got called out from Mujanel. And Kevin also asking, he says, Dom, say Georgie the correct way for me. You know what I'm asking for.
Georgi Merkulov.
That was just for you, Kevin.
There you go,
Just for
Kevin.
you. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of the questions that we get on Merkulov. This is someone that I hope he comes into camp in a similar way to Poitras did last year with that determination. There's a spot for him if he can go and earn it.
Yeah, I mean he is in a position, mainly due to Poitras's surgery, to take that spot from him. Again, he's got to want it. I have no problem with Merkulov's compete level. I
Right.
think it's in him. Mason Lohrei has nothing but great things to say about him. So we have to see just how much he wants it.
Now, I would also say, because that third line left wing spot, I mean, imagine him next to a guy like Frederick, opening up the ice from the middle. I mean, there's a lot of things you could do with him. You could put him next to Coyle. I do think that he can get that third line spot this year, and then be elevated to that second line spot once Brad Marchand moves on.
Yeah.
So, Kevin complimenting your Georgie Murphy with the tongue roll there.
Russian. The Russian tongue roll.
I think done. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm seeing it. You must be using a Mac.
I think no, actually, I'm not. That's the worst part. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. I just got the notification from my web browser that said it was being unresponsive. So that's then it started to get caught up. So let's roll on. Although, let's see. Kevin said stream's dying. Well, I have all the faith in the world that Dom can resuscitate it till I get back. Don't worry. Oh, he pulled up comments when I couldn't see them, so we manage. Number 3 on your list, though, you have John Farinacci playing right now with Providence as well. He was a former third-round pick, 76th overall back in 2021. He is also a center as well, playing in Providence, and you have middle six center or wing who can kill penalties, play on the second power play unit, and provide secondary scoring. Now, that right there, aside from the center part, is very descriptive of Jake DeBrusk.
Mm-hmm. And I love Farinacci. Like, let's not forget, he was undrafted, signed as a free. Well, no, he was drafted by Arizona, did not sign, and then signed as a free agent. So he was drafted, and a third round draft is not a bad pick. So he came with some potential. Now, can you put that back up for a second, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you look at the things that we should be concerned about, first is IQ, skating, shot, puck moving. Those are the key. And then you add in his compete level. The other stuff, the power play, the penalty kill, he can do them, but they're not important to the player finding success. So he's slightly above average in all the categories except physicality. But the key here is he can play center and wing, and he can do both very well. Like, I wouldn't say he's better at one than the other. I think he's equally as good at both. And we know how much the Bruins like these guys that can play dual positions.
Oh, multiple, yeah.
Right?
Now, does he also play on his off wing?
Yes, he can. He can actually play all three forward positions. I don't know that he did it in Providence, though. But he's capable of it.
Well, that's good, because so are guys like Morgan Geekie can do that too. Danton Heinen, I believe he came up and played for a while as a center, not at the NHL level, but he was a center coming up. He can do it all, but he's mostly a winger. And those are the kind of guys that fill in your roster.
Yep.
So I love that. I know he doesn't have a super crazy high ceiling like someone like Liesel, but it sounds like the distance between the floor and the ceiling for him is much smaller.
Yeah, they're closer together.
So that's where it comes from. Real quick, also, Jerry says, I thought Merkulov showed well even on the fourth line. I'd love to see him with more skill on the big club. If they see him as a center, do you see a path for him with the current roster?
Well, again, it's like I said with Liesel. It would have been nice to know a year ago or last season with Merkulov, because that could affect what you have to go out and do this off season. We could say the same thing about the Patra injury. There were so many questions that went unanswered, and we've talked about this plenty of times on previous shows, Chris, that this season answered a lot of questions for the Bruins, like Mason Lohrei taking the next step, or Jeremy Swayman being able to handle. Right. But for as many that were answered, there were unanswered questions when it comes to Liesel, Merkulov, Patra, and to some extent, Farinacci.
Right. And I look at Farinacci and I look at him as someone that the type of player that he's going to overtake on this roster sooner rather than later would be Jesper Boquist. Bottom six guy with versatility who provides a little something for you, but isn't a game breaker.
Right.
But Boquist last year, obviously, we saw him kind of do the wing center flip flop with Johnny Beecher.
Yeah.
John Farinacci being more of a natural center probably has a little bit better face-off capabilities than Boquist. So they may not have to make those switches as often, but that's the kind of role that he would be as of right now, that 13th forward who draws into the lineup on a lower line, but then can play and get elevated based off of injuries and stuff of that nature. So,
and Farinacci isn't like Liesel or Merkulov. You could actually put him on the fourth line.
Right. He has that kind of game to him.
Yeah.
And then Kevin said, so I'm assuming Lohrei and Patra are no longer prospects in your eyes.
No, if they're over 25 as of September 30th of this year, or they finished the season on the NHL Bruins roster, I did not consider them prospects in my rankings.
Which Kevin agrees with. We got Court jumping in. So hello to you as well. Let's see. He said Heinen played center before the NHL, so confirming that. Kevin says that Frederick proved that he can be a mainstay on the third line and produce. Yeah, but he's also someone that can play all three positions too, which is something that they're going to be looking towards. And a guy like Farinacci and, like Farinacci and Frederick on the same line works for me. You know, I wouldn't hate that as part of a third line. Court says, I think Beecher earned his role in the bottom six and as a future penalty killer. I definitely. What's that?
Definitely. We were talking just the other night. Can you imagine a fourth line? Maybe not for next season, but 2 seasons from now, fourth line of Johnny Beecher in the middle, Trevor Kuntar on the left, and Riley Duran on the right.
And we're gonna get to Duran in a little bit, but that sounds so good.
Yeah,
And
it's
and
that's
imagine,
why I said at the beginning of the show, I would put up Boston's bottom 6 prospects against anybody's in the NHL and feel comfortable with them.
and add to that, you complement them with a third line that has Trent Frederick and Farinacci on it.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
When we get to the next guy, where there's another one there. And I'm going to probably get shit on a lot by some people with the next ranking.
Let's see. Core also mentioned Beecher strong into dot, absolutely. And Kevin says Pat Maroon, Nick Ritchie, and Lee Stepniak is my fourth line next season.
Yeah,
maybe the retirement home, Kevin.
I thought you didn't want me to get mad, Kevin.
Well, with that, we'll just move on to the next one. We'll see how much shit you get for this one. The one and only Oscar Jelvik, left wing at BC right now. 5th round pick, 149th overall back in 2021. Left shot. Let me get Kevin's stupid comment off the screen here. You have him rolling in as a second line winger who can provide scoring and playmaking and play on the top power play unit. Compete level 6, physicality 0. Wow. Physicality at a 4. Hockey IQ is really up there along with skating and puck moving. He said he'd try. And Kevin, only because it's you. Is it not rude? So while we still got this up here, is there anything that you want to reference on the player card before I pull it down?
So, I've been watching Jelvik for a few years now. I watched him before he even got drafted. And I've always loved him. And especially after the Bruins drafted him. I watched every one of his games. And can we talk about the model I use for statistics just for a minute, Chris?
Absolutely.
So that people understand. I've come up with this model several years ago that pretty accurately predicts what a player should be producing in terms of points, moving from one league to another or just gaining another year's experience in the league that they're in. I haven't found a formula that works for the American Hockey League or going up to the American Hockey League or to the National Hockey League. Lord knows I'm trying, but it just doesn't work.
No, but I have. I will admit, I will back you up on this one. There have been plenty of off-camera conversations that we've had where we've reviewed what your projections are. We come back 6 months later, 8 months later when the season's over, and you are so almost spot on. I mean, I can't tell you how many times this guy's gotten within 3 points. And not just like, oh, this person got lucky and they were projected for 60 points and they ended up with 50 goals and 10 assists. No. The goals are within 1 or 2, and the assists are within 1 or 2, and the totals within 1 or 2. Like, this is almost spot on. So
it works so well that I actually sold the rights to an NHL team. I maintain the rights to use it for my own use when it comes to Bruins prospects. So when we go,
we're not going to tell you what team. I can see someone popping in the question.
Yeah, so I can tell you it's not Boston. So with Jelvik, and it'll be the same with Don's Lock-Mellis. I know Andrew asked the question way at the beginning. So this kind of feeds into that. He didn't do well. He was pretty close to what the model predicted in his first year in the NCAA. But I wasn't concerned with him not meeting it because it was a transition year. It was a transition to North America. the smaller ice. And the model predicted a big uptick for Yelvik this season. It predicted over doubling his goals, assists, and points from his first year.
I
And
do
he killed it.
I was going to say, I do remember we had a conversation though, and when you saw that, we talked about it, and you said I can see this one being an outlier and not being right there because of that transition to North American ice, and
Right.
that's what we were talking about. But he still got damn close.
But he blew it out of the water. And this guy, I know people are going to question the size and the physicality, but this guy just screams NHL player. He will not finish 4 years in the NCAA. He will turn pro at the end of next season. I would bet my mortgage on it.
Let's see. Jerry says, I've read your Yelvik evaluations for a few years. He's improved his production second year, just like you said. One more year at BC, then Providence.
Correct. That's exactly what I'm saying, Jerry.
Yep.
I do not think he will finish 4 years in college.
And Jerry also said, let's drool more about that potential fourth line of Beecher, Kuntar, and Duran.
Yeah.
Followed by Kevin saying Yelvik, Poitras, Lysell, future Boston second line.
Possible.
And Kevin had to be the one to do it. He obviously had to ask what team it was. So, like you said, not Boston, but that part will stick around here. And I'm going to go back to our player cards. And if anybody has questions on Yelvik, I'll pull them back up in the comment section. But we're going to keep this thing rolling here. 5th overall. You have someone that I paid attention to a lot going into camp last year, winger Brett Harrison. He was 85th overall back in 2021. So that draft class that should be starting to come into the league now over the next year or two. You have NHL upside listed as a third line winger who can provide secondary scoring while also playing on the top power play unit. Low compete level physicality and penalty kill. Great shot. Great on the power play. Probably because of that shot. They're usually kind of related. Can move the puck well. Better than average skating and hockey IQ. Where do we want to start with this left shot, left wing who's playing in Providence right now?
Well, I could see that if he were ever to reach his full potential, I think he could be a second line winger. I just don't think he will.
And why?
You see glimpses of his compete level being where it should be. I just, after watching him play for the last 4 seasons, maybe 5 seasons, I've been watching him play. At least 4. The compete level has always been an issue. And I don't know how you get it out of him, because a player with his size, he's not a bad skater. He knows where he needs to go, and he gets there. He could be dominant in front of the net, and at times he can be. It's just the compete level isn't there, and I don't know that it ever will be.
Yeah, he was someone that, again, drew a lot of my attention last year at development camp. I don't want to say he shied away from hits. That's not. I don't want to go that far, but he wasn't someone who was like, given the size, there was definitely a lot more physicality, and I don't say that as the same type of way that people criticize Brandon Carlo for it, because Brandon Carlo is, one, different position, defenseman. 2, he's not a physical defenseman. He's a defensive defenseman who looks at ways to break up the play, will take the body, but isn't overly physical. Brett Harrison puts himself in positions where he needs to be physical against the wall or body somebody up and just gets pushed around.
Here, let me give you an example. So you got a player coming around the boards, right?
Yep.
Harrison's coming in, angling him, and does the stick wave and skates on by.
Doesn't
No
even go for the
contact.
body.
It doesn't care for the body. That could be his puck right there.
Right. And just to pull the player card up, he's 6'2", 183. We're not talking, a small kid here. We're talking a full 6'2" frame, decent weight behind it. Hopefully, I wouldn't mind seeing him add, maybe another 7 to 10 pounds of muscle. That might help him.
He should be at 200.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't trying to ask too much of the kid, but if he puts a little bit more muscle on, that might give him some more confidence to get into those dirty areas. So again, if you're in the Boston area, you're going to go to the first week of July's development camp, which I'm going to try my best to get there at least once or twice. He's someone to watch for because, once to look for that kind of thing, it stands out like a sore thumb. And yet, but then you watch him.
And I remember talking to you about it before you went to camp. I said, watch us compete.
I couldn't
I think
it at that point.
I think I said my exact words to you at the time were, it sucks.
Yeah. I couldn't not see it at that point. Now, then you look and see him do like a shooting drill, like some sort of end-to-end shooting drill, breakout, whatever. And you see him move the puck. You see him take a shot, and you're like, holy shit, this kid's got the tools. Then you see a hitting drill, and you're like, the fuck, you're not made of glass. Come on, hit somebody.
Yep.
So I can see how, like you said, ceiling is so much higher. And I don't know, do they have him? They have him listed as a left winger, right? They're using him on the wing.
Well, yeah, I listed him as a left winger because I think that's where he should be.
I think that's where he meets his ceiling is on the left wing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not
because of the shot. Really, it's because of the shot. And
don't get me wrong, this team is in need of centers, but having a guy like Harrison who could, again, let's say he puts it together and he plays a little higher in the lineup, he can take the draw as a trained centerman if someone gets kicked out. That's not, we need face-off wins. That's not a reason to move someone out of a better position for them. So I would keep him on the wing, keep him, used to taking face-offs because at some point you're going to need him to take a few.
Yeah.
So, and then we will go to prospect number 6, playing over in Sweden, Jonathan Mirenberg, right defenseman, shoots right, 6'3", $196. Now, if I can get my own out of the way here, strong compete level, good, better than average compete level, puck moving, skating, hockey IQ, will be on the penalty kill. His upside is a shutdown, third pairing defenseman who can move the puck well and contribute a little offense. We got him in the same deal that brought over Michael DiPietro.
Correct. For Jack Studnicka.
So considering the fact that we didn't draft him, he was a 5th rounder, and I don't want to call him a throw-in, but he was part of a throwaway in Jack Studnicka. I'll take this kind of upside.
At the time of the deal, I couldn't figure out why Vancouver was giving up on him. And neither could Canucks fans. He was widely considered their second best defensive prospect in the system when he was when he was dealt to Boston. I have always liked him. I remember watching him in the J20 National in Sweden. But here's the thing. Again, one of those players I'm not worried about points at this time because it's all about development. He has offensive upside. I just don't know how it projects to the pro level. What I like is that he started playing against men professionally in Sweden as a 20-year-old this season. And he held his own. There were times he was playing 20 minutes a night, There were times he was playing 16 minutes a night. Um, and and he was the last cut on the blue line for Sweden at the World Championships as a 20-year-old. And we got this guy
for Jack,
for a throwaway.
For Jack Studnicka.
So I don't know who deserves the credit for that, whether it's PJ Axelson or somebody else.
My worry is the reason why they may have thrown him in is because they know he doesn't. They know he doesn't have plans to come over to the U.S. anytime soon.
Well, here's the thing, and I wrote about it extensively when he signed a contract extension for the next 2 seasons in the SHL, because he does have a new 2-year deal taking place. The thing is that unless you're a first-round pick out of Sweden, you can't come over until you're 24 years of age. That's the new NHL SHL agreement. A team can buy the rights to the player, buy him, pay the Swedish Ice Hockey Federation plus his team, plus the SHL, pay them an exorbitant amount of money to get him to come over, plus buy out his contract. The thing is the Bruins, unless they sign him before his contract in Sweden comes up, lose his rights. I think they lose his rights in 2025.
That's the concern, obviously. I mean, there's still time, so I'm not losing sleep over it. It's one of those things. Even if he plays out that 2-year contract, but you still are able to ink his ELC, like, guess what? That fits the Andrew Peak timeline. And if this guy is going to, let's say he signs his ELC but finishes out these last 2 years in Sweden, then by the time he comes over, he's NHL ready, and Peak's contract is over. You slide him in on an ELC on your bottom third right side. Like, there's a viable plan there.
Yeah, there. To me, Merenberg is their top prospect on the blue line.
Sam just says a general, it's too bad. I'm not sure what in reference to. So, Sam, if you don't mind clarifying a little bit. And then Andy did have a question real quick. It was a little off topic where he says, I know I'm late and this is the prospect show, but did you guys see the article by Dom L about the best free agent centers? Every single one had terrifying red flags for the money years Bees would have to pay. As he mentions here, we'll come back to that one. And we'll address that when we kind of come back through and do a quick run around. But I did want to let Andy know and acknowledge that it was there for him. Plus, I wanted to see. Oh, and Sam was clarifying. I wanted to see him in Boston this season. I'm guessing on the Merenberg. So,
you know what? I don't know.
Would you rather
if
see
I
him
should
play
say
this
this?
year?
I talked to both his father, his mother, his sister, and there's no confirmation yet on whether he'll be coming over for development camp.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see him there for sure.
I've been told he was offered to come over and join Providence for the playoff run. Just to be with the team and see how it goes. And
all we know is that didn't happen.
Yeah, there's some things I can say and some things I can't. Um,
Well, here's my stance on it, with a little less in-depth knowledge, I guess. Kid was born in 2003. So that makes him what, 21 right now?
21 in April. Yeah, turned 21
So
in April.
think about where you were in your life when you were 21, and now imagine picking up, walking away from everything and everybody that you know, and flying across the ocean to do a job with people that you've never met before.
Especially when he had the chance to make the Swedish or to be with his Swedish country mates vying for the world championship roster spot. Like,
Right.
why would he want to give that up?
My point being is I can understand the hesitation to just jump ship. Like, we're not no, I have no shot, never had a shot at making the NHL. So for me to sit here on a microphone and go, well, why the fuck wouldn't you want to? Well, because for me, it's not an option. If anything remotely close became an option, hell, there are people who are excited just to go and wait in 3-hour long lines to stand next to the Stanley Cup because they have no shot at making it to earn the cup. So when you're in a completely different position where you actually have this opportunity in front of you, you legitimately have to weigh the decision of, is this what's best for me right now?
Right.
Me going to work at the bank that I work at, a 9 to 5 job, versus going overseas to make $850,000. That's an easy decision for me to tell you it's in my best interest to go do.
Mm-hmm.
Making that much more than I'm currently making. If he's making a comfortable living where he's at right now, and he feels like it's in his best interest to stay, it's not on us to question that.
And he's being advised. Let's not
Exactly.
forget he's being advised.
Exactly. And let's be honest. I mean, you might have some details on something, but we generally don't know. Maybe his grandmother's sick. Maybe his
Mm-hmm.
mother is sick. I'm trying to think of who it was. JFK for Rebecca Carlson.
Yeah.
Didn't he end up going back home to play in Europe because of a family member issue? Like, despite how much the Bruins held him in a higher regard and wanted him to stay, I think it was JFK. It could have been a different prospect. It was around that
Yeah.
time frame.
No, it was JFK. And the only news that ever was made public was that it was personal reasons.
Okay, yeah, I think that's personal reasons is a wide variety,
Mm-hmm.
but that's also typical to sum it up as, I got a family member who's going through some stuff and I want to be there for them. I'm not telling you what their mess looks like,
Right.
regardless of what it is.
Right.
It's not for me to tell you, and they don't want me to tell you. So for me personally, this is what I'm doing. It's my decision. Done.
Yep.
Maybe that's something that's holding this kid back. Paul is chiming in real quick. Farinacci is going to surprise people. I think he is taking regular shifts by mid-season. Do you think he could be a mid-season kind of bump up?
Yeah, I could, but it all depends on what happens to the roster this offseason, right?
Fair, absolutely. And let's continue. We will go down, not too far down the street, about an hour down the street from me, for our next prospect, Dan Lockmelis, playing at UMass in the NCAA, 4th-round draft pick, from Latvia, high compete level, not very physical. Hopefully he can get a little bigger to match the 6'1" frame. Better than average shot skating IQ and puck moving. You have him listed as a third-line center who is responsible defensively, yet can provide secondary scoring.
Yes. Now, here's the thing with Locke Mellis, and this will go to Andrew's question that he asked way at the beginning. That what I want to see from Locke Mellis is the same thing I saw from Oscar Yelvik, and that is, this was a transition year, and to have a breakout season next season, I don't expect him to get to the level that Yelvik was at this year, but he's certainly capable of it. Lockmellis was a better scorer in the J20 back in Sweden. What Lockmellis has, and people don't realize this, is he's what, 20 years old,
Yeah,
Chris?
yeah.
Um,
He's a 2004
has
04 kid. Yeah,
80 games of international experience for Latvia as a 20-year-old. Most professionals don't get 80 games with their country.
yeah,
So he's a player for a long time has been going up against the best in the world at his age group, sometimes above his age group.
yeah.
Like he played at the World Championships as a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to the draft interview story for Jaromir Jagr. Why weren't you ever a captain? Well, I was always playing 3 years above my age.
Yeah.
Okay. Why are you playing so poorly? Well, I'm 20 and I'm playing with 24-year-olds. Like there's going to be some wiggle room there.
Yep.
I do want to bring up before we continue real quick. Sam has a comment here. Bruins scouting staff needs to be better on drafting, my opinion.
No, you're wrong, Sam. You're wrong.
My question to you, Sam, is in what way do they need to be better at drafting? Look, for instance, at this year's draft. You do not have a first, a second, or a third round pick. Going back further, you have not made a first round selection in the top 25 picks in almost a decade. I think the last one was McAvoy.
And what was Pasternak?
Pasternak came in before McAvoy.
Yeah.
I think McAvoy was the last one.
McAvoy was the last one. 2016?
Yeah, I think so. That sounds about right. So you're talking 8 years. You haven't had a first round pick, pretty much. So what do they have to do better at drafting? Just because you're drafting guys who are a couple years away, that's kind of how you want your pipeline to work. So I'm not going to shit all over you for this comment. I think, like Dom said, I think you're wrong. They're working within the confines of what they have, which is draft picks in the mid 100s and later. And so, yeah, that's where you find guys who have high ceilings and low floors and somewhere in the middle. So I'm curious where you think they could be doing better.
Well, Sam, if you were here at the beginning, I explained it.
Which is exactly
so those rankings. Those rankings look at the top prospects and base, okay, who's got the best ones? The Bruins haven't had the picks.
Yeah. When you're not picking,
they haven't had the picks.
You're not going to be a top 10 prospect pool.
But their picks from the third round on, I would put up against anybody else's in the NHL and feel very, very comfortable about it. And very comfortable.
Sam, let's
like who picked Mason Lohrei?
Yeah, right. The other question that I would counter that point with, why what, Sam? Just one word question. I want to make sure I clarify it first. Let me take your 28th ranking and flip it on you. If you have the first ranked prospect pool, does not that mean you are selecting high in the draft? So let's take Buffalo for an instance. They've got guys like Zach Benson, Kulich, Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin. The list goes on. Well, how did they
even had Jack Eichel?
Right. How did they get all those guys? Top 10, top 15 draft selections. How? by not making the playoffs, by being a bad team. And guess what? Even with those players, they're still not making the playoffs. So having a high ranked prospect pool means you suck. That's how you get a high ranked drafting high in the draft. That's how you get high end prospects, by sucking. Look at San Jose, Will Smith, Macklin Scalabrini. They didn't get them because they won the Stanley Cup. Like, look at Vegas. They are as dominant as they are, and they're not fucking drafting. And guess what? Also, when it comes to, oh, this team's ranked 26th, guess what? Someone has to. If you're going to do a rankings from 1 to 32, someone has to be 28th. Someone has to be 15th. That doesn't mean the gap is a chasm of a scale of 1 to 1,000. The difference could be, well, between the two, it's a coin flip, and the coin landed on heads. So that's how I went with it.
Okay, let's move on.
So let's see. Isn't it better to rebuild than retool? No. Look at the rebuilds that are going on. Anaheim, Buffalo, San Jose. I don't want to be those guys right now. So we'll be able to come back to that more. Nice little break from some of the prospects here. We will drop back in on number 8, Frederick Bruin. Let's see here. 6'3" defenseman, left shot, $190. Third pairing offensive defenseman who can quarterback a power play. Kevin, I see the comments. Hush. Low physicality, better than average compete level. Low level shot, but really good at moving the puck. Good at skating. Good IQ. Kind of comes off the page like a Torrey Krug type. Would that be a fair kind of player?
Better skater, not quite the shot. Obviously, much bigger than Torrey Krug.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, this guy has, at least this guy has all the offensive tools you could ask for, and they're translatable. And by that I mean the skill set translates to the pro game, AHL and NHL. He needs to work on his all around game, but you've got to be impressed by the skill set. And I think being in Providence, where Adam McQuaid can work with him, Ryan Mujanel can work with them. They can do a lot of video work, that we can see that compete level, which I talked at the beginning how important it is. We see it come up to a level that you want to see it at for defensemen. This guy's a natural quarterback for the power play. When people are clamoring for Mason Lohrei to quarterback the power play in Boston, wait till you get a look at Frederick Bruin, and you'll be clamoring for him over Mason Lohrei.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want Lohrei to get some PP2 time this year, but Frederick Bruin can move the puck so well and smooth, and that it matches the IQ and his skating ability. He's definitely someone to watch down at Providence. Sam is calling him a dark horse. Are you referring to him as a dark horse to make the roster? Because I wouldn't go that far.
No, he's not making the roster. I will say this about Bruin. His last 2 years in the Q, okay, he was the second best defenseman at setting up his teammates for shots on goal, and he was the best defenseman in the Q for setting up teammates for slot shots on goal or high danger.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those ones where you would want him to be a seventh defenseman that if you could extend your bench by one player, it would be him. Because you want your six and then him for the power play when you need an offensive output. Yeah, Sam, I can't get on board with that. I don't think he's a dark horse to make the roster this year. I think he's just too far away. And
He didn't make the Providence roster full time last year. He
right,
only played in 40 some odd games.
But you know
To
what, though?
expect,
That's okay because he's 21.
right. So to expect him to have any chance of playing in the NHL next season, I don't see it.
You know, and the compete level and the physicality. I mean, the guy's 6'3" with a 190-pound frame. If he can pack on another 10 pounds, then the physicality can probably increase. And once that, a lot of times when you see someone with a low compete level, that physicality ranking is going to be a little lower too, because that's why they don't have a high compete level, because they can't get in and knock people around. Like in a little while, we're going to have someone who pops up, not to give away, but we're at what, 8 overall? Couple picks away or a couple prospects away, we're going to have someone with really good attributes that kind of also puts it in perspective as well. But before we get to him, we have to get to the number 9 on the list, and that is Ryan Walsh from Cornell. Middle six center who can provide secondary scoring and play on the second power play unit. He is a center, like I said, at Cornell. Decent IQ, decent skating. Puck moving is very solid. He's a right shot, not very physical. So, again, he's not going to be on the penalty kill. And that compete level, same thing. Another guy where the physicality and the compete level could go up if he can put on a little bit more muscle.
And it was his first year at Cornell, too. So, another one of the Bruins' overage draft picks. It was his third draft, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was his third. So here's the thing. There were a lot of question marks among the prospect watchers about what Walsh could do at the NCAA level in terms of production. Of course, I refer back to my model because to me it works, and I'm not shy about publishing him at the beginning of the season, saying this is what I expect this guy to get. And Walsh was not perfect, but he was at where I expected him to be. So if you can put that up again, Chris is right when he says the compete level and the physicality are something that could grow as he puts on a little bulk. But here's the thing: he's a freshman,
right?
Okay,
he's 21.
Right. I expect just by natural progression for that compete level and that physicality to go up as he gets more experience. And I'm sure you'll agree with me on that, Chris. It's tough for a rookie to come in and dominate physically, or to always be at the highest compete level to players that have 2 or 3 more years experience than you. But once you become comfortable and more experienced, it begins to come naturally for you. And I expect that's what we're going to see from Walsh beginning next season.
Yeah,
agree?
I 100%. And I think everybody has this vision of Brad Marchand being short, stout, physical, all these things, but not every player of that size can play that way.
Right.
And I'm sure you probably have better notes from way back when he was getting scouted, but there was potential for him to turn into the player that he's become. He had a great shot. He did have good hockey IQ. He could skate. He brought the physicality because he knew that's how he was going to crack the lineup. And kind of the same way that Poitras did last year, where he went into those camps going, I'm going to make it the hardest decision for them to cut me and send me back. He played a little bit in Providence, came back in another year, and said, this time I'm going to make it the hardest decision. I'm going to be the last cut if I'm cut at all. And he let his shot do the work. He let his skating, his IQ, his passing, he let his skill do the talking in camp, and then also brought the physicality, brought the compete level to make them go, this kid fucking wants it. And so if we tell him his role is on the fourth line, he's going to be thrilled. And that's going to give him confidence to keep playing this way. And guess what? That compete level never left him because he needed that drive to be physical so he could make it because he knew he had those other attributes. But no, Walsh isn't Brad Marchand.
Right.
Like, he's also taller, but that's beside the point. There's different ways to play the game. 6 foot, $180, he can snap. So a bigger guy can literally snap him. And so, yeah, he's going to be a little more hesitant to get into the physical areas. That's okay. That just adapt your game. Guess what? You know who else wasn't a very physical player who probably had maybe a 5 physicality on their card? Wayne Gretzky. But you know what else?
5 or lower.
I was going to say he had 10s everywhere else. So
yeah.
But again, he adapted his game. Jerry says, I have a good buddy that is a Cornell grad. He has buddies around the program, and they like Walsh a lot. The word I've heard is smart. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the pick. People see overager and automatically they flip out, but you have to give the Bruins credit, the Bruins drafting credit in finding these guys. Let's not forget, Lori was an overager. Trevor Kuntar was an overager. Walsh is an overager. So they're, I don't want to say they're lucking out and give anybody any ammunition out there, but they're doing their job. They're finding it. The Bruins scouting is not a problem. It's where they're picking that's the problem.
I was going to say, Ryan Walsh screams late round flyer. And guess what? He was 188 overall, 6th round. And you know what? That's the kind of guy you're going to get. Little bit of work, play through it, needs a little bit of time to develop. And at age 21, to be able to say, hey, these are the areas that you got to work on a little bit. You're 21. You got time. If he was 27, then we'd be able to sit there and go, he is what he is at this point.
Right.
Trust me, we got guys like that down in Providence too. Guess what? They're not on this list. But moving on the list, this next one, as I mentioned, he's got that 10 compete level ranking. Physicality is a 9, 6 foot 203 frame. He's another left winger down in Providence. You have him listed as a 4th line winger who can provide energy, physicality, forecheck, and chip in some offense and move up in a pinch. It is a name that we have mentioned quite a bit so far tonight, Trevor Kuntar.
Yeah, I love this kid. I've loved him for a couple of years now, and Bruins fans are absolutely gonna fall in love with this kid. The shot, just putting him at an 8 for a shot may be low there. It is that good. There's no arguing the compete level and the physicality. If there's one area I would like to see him improve, it's in his puck movement. The only thing that's going to keep him from being a very good third liner, possibly being able to move up to the second line in a pinch, is his puck moving abilities, being able to set up teammates. Um, you know, um, if he had that, I'd say he could be a second line player.
And he would probably be a little closer to the 5th spot on this list.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the kind of guy, we mentioned it. Putting him on the left side of a guy like Beecher, is that line going to provide you offense? No.
It'll provide some. It'll
provide some, yes. But again, Danny Paille wasn't a 20, 30 goal scorer. Sean Thornton certainly wasn't a 25 goal scorer. You need more than just a roster full of Pasternaks, as we mentioned before. These are the kind of guys that you can put on that, on a fourth line. And again, depending on who's in the box, possibly he can learn how to kill penalties.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need these guys to fill in your roster. It happens. And guess what? That's why you took him in the 3rd round. You didn't trade up into the 1st round to pick this kid. That's why he's where he's at. It's okay. I'm looking forward to seeing this kid play on the left side.
So go back to Kuntar's draft year and look at everybody else drafted in the 3rd round and tell me you wouldn't put Trevor Kuntar up against him.
I actually have another tab over here where I can pull up. What was that draft year again?
2021? No.
21, I think.
Yeah.
We'll pull this up here. Let's see if we get any questions that come rolling in. Boston, he was the 2021 was the Liesel draft.
Oh, so it's 2020.
Must have been 2020. Yeah, because that was the Lafreniere, Stützle, Byfield.
Yeah.
And you picked Mason Lohrei, 58, Trevor Kuntar, 89, Mason Langenbrunner, 151, and Riley Duran at 182. And I'll give you a hint, at least one of those other names shows up on this list. And I'm sure we'll touch on the other one at some point. But we talked about Kuntar before. Based on the role, he's someone who could be that dark horse to make the team out of camp.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's going to be on the 4th line. He's the kind of guy that makes you look at a guy like Pat Maroon and go, we'd love to keep you around, but we can't pay you what you want. If you want to stick around, you're going to have to take the money we can offer you.
And you know what? Kuntar will give you what Maroon give you, except the I don't know, because Kuntar will fight. But
the only thing Pat Bruin brings that Kuntar won't bring is the Stanley Cup playoffs experience.
Yeah, or the leadership.
Right. But even then, he doesn't come off as someone to me who's afraid to drop the gloves or get involved.
No, he will.
And honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Kuntar, Beecher, Maroon. Beecher's got some speed. I don't know.
Kuntar's got some speed.
Of course, Kuntar, Beecher, Brazeau also wouldn't be that bad either.
No, but I've been saying it for a couple of months. This guy would be my pick to surprise and make the roster out of camp.
Oh, and actually, I mentioned one of these other guys was going to come up on the list. Woburn, Mass native Riley Duran is next on the list here. We're going through these pretty well. Also strong complete level and physicality. Again, those two I linked together. Not great at puck movement on the right-hand side wing. Average hockey IQ, but a great shot, great skating. And you have him as a 4th-line winger who can provide energy, physicality, forecheck, and chip in some offense and move up in a pinch.
Yeah, he's another guy may have been a little bit low on his shot because he's got a great shot. Here's the thing. people are going to love Durant and the way he plays the game. But if you're expecting a whole lot of offense, you're going to be disappointed. But you need a player like him in your lineup. And I caution people about the offense because he didn't have great numbers in college. He played the vast majority of his time this past season on the top line, uh, but didn't produce as a top liner. So I caution people about the production and the offensive ability. But the other parts of his game, man, he screams Boston Bruin.
And I'm going to go back to Jerry's comment here. Let's drill more about that potential fourth line of Beecher, Kuntar, Duran. Like, not next year, but the year after, I am all over this line because these are three guys that have that heart. They really do remind you a lot of the way they play the game, the Merlot line. Physical, get up in your face. I mean, no one ever went penalty kill. Sean Thornton, get out there. But also at the same time, if someone needed a breather and you were on the penalty kill, you weren't overly afraid to go, give me 30 seconds on this kill.
Right.
And all three of these guys, Beecher already can be on the penalty kill. Kuntar and Duran, they are working, they're the type of guys that, first make the NHL first. Then, hey, how can I increase my value to the team? Well, learn to kill some penalties. Sounds good.
Jake DeBrusk did it.
Yeah. There's a reason why Jake DeBrusk is going to make more money than people want to pay him. Because he has a 200-foot game. Like, I don't know. I just that line right there, I am all over that in 2 years. The problem is that's going to be the year that John Beecher needs a new contract. So
yeah, but
going to make things interesting.
Well, there's a thing. Well, what's Beecher going to earn on his next contract? That's a thing.
Yeah, and it's not like you can worry about that and address it now and try to lock him in long term. But I on that next contract, he's someone that you lock in and go, hey, can we pay you a little more than we want to next 3 years, but also have it work out in our favor for the 3 years after that?
Right.
So it's a 6-year contract at $2 million. Is that too much? I don't know. Worth kind of thinking about at least. Jerry says Lawrence Academy kid, teammate with Peak, I believe.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say I don't know if there's enough age gap there or not. So, yeah, we'll see if people have other questions that roll in. What we'll do, just because we're already about an hour and a half into this, and we have a lot more questions. We have a lot more prospects to get through because we want to cover literally as many as we can. Come up with some questions. We've got the dozen or so. Liesel we've covered, Merkulov, Farinacci, Yelvik, Harrison, Mirenberg, Lockmelis, Brunet, Walsh, Kuntar, Duran. Come up with some questions here. I know, Dom, you have to step away for about a minute or two here. I'm going to refill my water, but we will be right back. Honestly, just taking a 5-minute here, if that. And as I see some comments come in. So I'm going to say don't go anywhere because just all this is getting to me and I need some water. So, Dom, do you have any final quick thoughts before we take 5?
No, I'll be back quick. Just sorry, guys, but I have a needle I got to take at 8 o'clock. So it'll only take me 2 minutes to get it ready and poke myself.
I might not even be able to go and get water by the time he gets back. So we'll pull him off here for a minute. I did see your comment here, Jerry. That line is fast and has missiles attached. Absolutely. Again, I wouldn't be looking at that line to be this massive offensive production. But you need guys, when you don't have a Bergeron at the top of your lineup, you need guys that are able to go in and kill some penalties, kind of give your top guys breathers. And these are the kind of guys that are going to do that. And when you're picking them, we've gone through their draft overall. When you're picking in late rounds, that's what you're going to get. And you're going to have to find ways to get, your next David Pastrnak a different way. Maybe that comes from trading Linus Ullmark and getting that 10th overall pick. That's a hell of a way to do it. And I know a lot of people want to value Ullmark more than the 10th overall, but that's one I jump all over if I'm Boston, because that's the kind of guy that we need at 10th overall, is the kind of guy we need to start getting in our system soon. So BG, out of the prospects mentioned tonight, which one or two have the best shot at making the NHL team next season? There's a couple that I wouldn't necessarily consider the dark horse. I went through the names before Dom stepped away, and those are the ones that we've covered so far. There's still a lot more for us to get to. Fabian Lysell can very easily make the roster. The concern with him is that heart, that desire, the compete level, and just being a little more physical, the attitude, that kind of thing. If he's matured in that sense, he absolutely can take that second line right shot, right wing, pull that from DeBrusque. Merkulov might be another year away. He did get that time to slot in for Poitras, and experiment didn't go well. So I think he still can use another year, too, if they are hell-bent at keeping him on center, which, okay, but I don't see that desire. I would much rather keep him on the left wing and move him up. And then, obviously, the one that we were just talking about not that long ago, Kuntar. Kuntar would be my favorite to come out and kind of pull what Poitras did in answering that question. The best shot would be Kuntar, because you're not going to ask a lot from him to make that roster. The guys he's beating out, Brazeau, Maroon, those kinds of guys. So Dom should be finishing up here. I'm going to see if he is back. And let's take a look here. It looks like he is sitting back down now. Once I get the thumbs up from him, we'll be able to jump back in. And we welcome Dom back.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. Just to catch you up, Jerry said that the line was fast and has missiles. And just kind of recapping some of the guys that we talked about for BG here, who has the best shot. Again, just a quick summary. Lysell could do it if that maturity factor is there. Merkulov could do it if they're not hell-bent on keeping him at center. But Kuntar, because they're asking the least out of him based off of where his game is at.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So the next one, though, let's see. We did Riley Duran. Now, this is a guy that people, if they've been following you this year, have seen a number of tweets come about. Not always, or very rarely, I don't want to say positive, but usually they have to do with suspensions. This is a guy that Boston fans are going to love from day one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Jackson Edward plays for the London Knights, left shot defenseman. Dude is massive, 6'3", $195, physicality and compete level. I'm guessing he's the kind of guy that if you could put him at a 12, you would have.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
What I like the rest about this isn't just the physicality and compete levels being at 10. Better than average skating, shot, puck movement, and penalty kill. This isn't a guy that I want on my power play. That's totally fine. I don't care. You got to have at least one defenseman who can't kill or isn't on the power play. That's fine. Typically, you got 4 forwards and 1 defenseman anyway. This guy can sit. Average hockey IQ. I might have to disagree with you a little bit on that one. He might need a little more education on when to be physical. But like you put here, second pairing, shutdown defenseman can transition the puck and bring physicality, kill penalties, and play both sides.
Yeah, he played predominantly on the right side. So can you put that up for a second, Chris? Because there's a couple of numbers I want to go over.
Sam's comment, love this guy, tough dude. Joel, hopefully you can address this. He says not heavy. So hopefully you can address that, and I'll pull the player card back up here.
No, he needs to add some bulk, if that's what you mean by not heavy. If you're telling me he doesn't play heavy, I'd disagree with you.
Yeah, I'd say go watch a London Knights game from this year.
Yeah, there's a couple of numbers here I want to go over. First being the shot. If this was a year ago, I would have put a shot at a 5. He put in so much work into developing his shot last off season that the improvement was very visible from day one of this season. The other one I want to go over is the power play. And the reason why it is so low is that the London Knights have Oliver Bonk. They have Isaiah George, 2 highly touted prospects already drafted in the NHL, and Sam Dickinson, who is expected to easily go in the top 10 this year. They were so deep in offensive defensemen that they played Oliver Bonk in the bumper position on the power play. So basically, Edward got 0 time on the power play. And it's hard to judge a player on his power play ability when he doesn't get any. There's that. That's why he doesn't fare well on the power play.
And at only 20 years old, there's still time. He could end up being better on the power play than he's ranked right now. But to your point, you can't. There's no eye. You can't give him an incomplete.
No. You can only go by what you see, and I can tell you that Jackson Edward, when he was drafted in the OHL priority selection by the London Knights, he was drafted as an offensive defenseman. Okay.
Good movement of the puck. I mean, that part may come around, but
right.
When you're fourth on the depth chart for a role that has, or fourth or fifth on the depth chart for a power play defenseman, you're not going to get a lot of time.
No, you're not. Like I said, they played one of their defensemen in the bumper position. So there's only so many spots out there, right? So he was drafted as an offensive defenseman. But the problem is when you play with Dale Hunter or for Dale Hunter, you're learning the defensive game first. I mean, I saw it with Evan Bouchard in the OHL under Dale Hunter coming in as a 15-year-old, and look at him now in the NHL. I'm not saying Jackson Edward is going to turn into Evan Bouchard, by no means, but that's what you have to expect under the Dale Hunter system. Is he's got to learn defense before he allows him to play offense, and he took that big step this year. The thing with Edward is he played on the right side as a less shot defenseman for most of the year, paired with Sam Dickinson. Okay. Sam Dickinson is a two-way defenseman, but he goes all out on offense. So Edward was expected to
be defense,
stay back and cover for him.
So just because you're ranking him as a defensive defenseman right now does not mean he can't transition into a two-way defenseman.
Right. That'll come. So, and he's a minute eater. I wish there was a way of rating that, but you look at London's top 4 defensemen through the OHL finals and the Memorial Cup. Their number 5 and number 6 barely saw the ice.
Right.
Like through the Memorial Cup, the first game against Saginaw, they didn't play their first or their number 5 or number 6 defenseman until halfway through the second period. They never saw the ice.
And with a guy like this too, like you said, second pairing shutdown defenseman. What does that mean? Let's say the offense does get, a little bit better, but he's still primarily a shutdown kind of guy. Well, given the fact that after a year on his offside, you can put him with McAvoy, with Carlo, or with Lindholm and be okay with it. And those 3 guys aren't going anywhere. So by the time he makes the lineup, they'll still be around. He's the kind of guy that has the ability to keep up with them defensively and allow McAvoy to be the two-way guy that he is and not have to worry about getting back and covering for a guy who's pinched up too high and won't get back in time. But then he can also pair over, move to the left side and pair with Carlo and kill a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot there that you really want to and have to like here. Jesse, just real quick, chiming in on something we had talked about while you were away, talked about Merkulov being 2 years away. I highly doubt his agent will let him stay in the AHL at 25, 26 years old. KHL would be too attractive at that point, in my opinion. I just want to clarify what I said was he could make the lineup as early as this year if they are okay with moving him to left wing and he can adjust. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he could crack the lineup. If they are hellbent at keeping him at center, I could see him staying one more year in Providence and in 2 years being in the lineup. I just want to make sure I worded things correct on that. Joel said not heavy. Obviously, as we were talking about Jackson Edward here, only 195, 220 is heavy. Again, putting on a little bit of weight won't hurt him, but that physicality, that compete level is right where you want it to be. And Jerry says we were debating Ginger or Marianne while you were gone.
I know what that's about. Marianne.
So after Jackson Edward, we have someone that not nearly as many people are going to be as familiar with, but if you can catch him down in Providence, I would. Drew Bavaro. This would, like you said, third pairing defenseman who can transition the puck and be a penalty killer. Good movement, good puck movement rating, good shot. Everything's above average, which is really what you want to see when you're grabbing an undrafted free agent. He is 24 right now, 6'3", almost 200. I'm going to leave this up because you'd like to reference it when you take over. I will turn it over to you. What do you want to add about Drew Bavaro?
Yeah, the numbers are all on par where they should be. The thing is now is translating it to the American Hockey League. And if the IQ can remain at 6, the skating obviously isn't going to change. The shot, the puck movement, all that won't change. It's the right side of the board. Like, how's he going to be at the power play at playing against professionals now, the penalty kill? How's his physicality going to hold up playing against men now? And same with the compete level. Will he be able to bring it when he's playing guys that are closer to his size, day in, day out, shift after shift after shift? And the problem with projecting is you don't know until you've actually seen it. But I can tell you, the left side of the board, I have no problems with. It's maintaining that right side now at the next level. I know he got a couple of games in with Providence, but that's nothing. We've got to see how he does it over a season now.
I was going to say 7 games barely counts.
Yeah, we've got to see how that projection changes now that we get to see him on a regular basis.
Yeah, and he spent 4 years in the NCAA, 2 years at Bentley, 2 years at the University of Notre Dame. And this is what, when you're talking about he needs to get the experience at the level, year one, 16 games, then 36, 37, 35. You need a collective 100 games,
Yeah.
between the AHL, maybe give him a look at the NHL, depending on how he looks in Providence. If he comes into Providence and everything's translated and you have an injury up in Boston, there's no reason why you can't give him a look because he's got the two-way contract option, just to see how, does it translate? Because if you can get a guy like this where the game just continually translates from one level to the next, no, I'm not expecting him to come in and get 20 points in 35 games like he did last year at Notre Dame. But if he can transition the puck, if he can give you 10 minutes on the third line at the age of 24, 25 years old, that means you're headed the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And on Tuesday's show, was it Tuesday this week or was it last week?
Tuesday.
One of the last two shows, we were talking about someone's concern about going out and getting another defenseman. And one of the reasons that we brought that up is because your pipeline on defense is absolutely barren.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean you have nobody. You've got guys like Drew Bavaro. If his game translates over to Providence, you have a pipeline now. You still have questions, but you have the makings of a defensive pipeline that you can actually turn to and say, you know what? We actually don't have to overextend on Jacob Chikrin.
Right. Now, the numbers on the left are key. That's not to say that they can't change.
Right.
Because we saw it with Jackson Edward, where I talked about the amount of work he put in last offseason with his shot, where a year ago would have been a 5, now it's a 7. But moving from league to league, those numbers on the left should not change.
Right. Now, if there's a little bit of change just to show an adjustment in his game, I'm not overly worried about it. Let's say the shot takes a slight step back, but you see him better overall on the power play. Like, can you refine the shot? Yes. Can you work, skating is something that, if you put more time into the power play or bulking up to be able to play more physical, and all of a sudden, your body changes a little bit because you packed on an extra 10 pounds and your skating decreases, well, you can get back out on the ice and skate some more and regain it because you have that talent already.
You have the fundamentals. You have the technique.
Exactly.
And, the other major difference now is that these guys will be playing under professional coaches.
Right.
I don't mean just bench coaches. I mean skills coaches, nutritionists, all that kind of stuff. Whereas at the college level or the junior level, you're a little bit below that.
Yeah.
So it's harder to work on some of those skills like skating or your shot or, even your nutrition, because they don't have they don't pay the staff like NHL teams do to bring in the best of the best.
Right. And these last three guys, Bavaro, these last three defensive guys, I'm going to skip over Duran and Kuntar, but Brunet, Edward, and Bavaro. I'll throw Mirenberg in there as well, but being in Sweden, it's a little harder to gauge. Those guys, getting them in to work with Adam McQuaid, oh my God. Like,
and what do they all have in common? Size.
Yep.
6'3", 6'3", 6'3",
190, 195, and 198.
Yeah.
They have a type.
Yeah.
Also fitting, I don't want to say if he would fit that type, but 6'2", $175, 14th on your list. Beckett Hendrickson, as that one pops up, playing in the USHL right now. He was a 4th-round pick last year. So the fact that you have him 15th 1 year after his draft window.
14th.
I'm sorry, 14th. Middle 6 winger who can provide secondary scoring, good defensive play, and play on both special teams. That speaks volumes for a guy who's 1 year removed from his draft class.
Okay, we should put up Pelosi at 15 up as well, because we got to talk about these two guys together.
All right, let me pull up Pelosi here. Unfortunately, I can't pull them up side by side.
No.
But you can see him here, 6'1", 181, playing again USHL for the Sioux Falls Stampede. And then you have here 3rd-line center who can provide secondary scoring, good defensive game, and play on the second power play unit.
Right. So here's the thing, Chris. I'm getting a lot of flack from a lot of people saying I've got them ranked too low.
Well, here's my current question to them. Who are you lowering to put in their place?
Well, I don't even want to answer it that way, because you could make an argument and everybody is entitled to an opinion. But I look at it like, here's how I look at it. And why Hendrickson over Pelosi? Why not the other way around? I said at the time of the draft, when they drafted the pair, that I would have reversed the 2 picks. I would have taken Hendrickson first, Pelosi second. And I'm going to refer to my model, because my model had predicted these guys to be pretty much equal. And this is where people that make fun of my model and tell me it doesn't work, I turn around and say, well, why was it bang on for Beckett Hendrickson? I think it was within 2 points. And why was Chris Pelosi so far off? And the other thing is they were line mates for almost the entire season.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say I actually have that. It can be found in part 2, your diagram of your 4-part prospect series. Just to give people an idea of how well your model works. Beckett Hendrickson, you predicted 28 goals and 34 assists. He had 27 goals and 37 assists. So damn near spot on. Now, Pelosi, as you said, a little further off, 33 projected, 21 actual goals, 29 predicted assists, 34 actual assists. So the numbers ended up being within 7, but Hendrickson was within 2. So there's a bit more of a disparity there, but I'm sorry. If you're within 10, I call that a win.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the other thing too. When you're trying to project players, it's easy to project an Oscar Yelvik. It's easy to project a Donslack Mellis. It's easy to predict a Ryan Walsh when they're 2 levels below the NHL. Okay, they've got the AHL and the NHL next. On the same token, it's easy to project a Fabian Lysell or a John Farinacci or a Georgi Merkulov, because they're 1 level below the NHL.
Right.
But when we're talking Beckett Hendrickson and we're talking Chris Pelosi, they're 3 levels below the NHL. They've still got up to 4 years of the NCAA. They've still got a year, maybe 2 in the American Hockey League, and then the AHL.
Right.
So until they show me what they can do at the NCAA level, they can't move up. And I think I've already got them pretty high, considering that they're 3 levels below the National Hockey League as it is. Another thing, you can look at Chris Pelosi and compare him to, say, a Jake Schmaltz, and compare their last season in the USHL, and you'll find that their stats were almost identical.
Yeah, and again, when like you said, when you're doing projections, it's also tough too because, and I know this guy's not on our list, but he stood out a little bit last year in camp, and I'd be interested to see what his card looks like, not his ranking, but his card for some of the grades. You might even know him off the top of your head, but Ty Gallagher, you had projected for 7 goals, 26 assists. He ended up with 5 assists and no goals.
Right.
But if you look at how he was used, there's a reason he transferred schools in the NCAA. He wasn't happy with his ice time, and he really didn't get a lot of it.
No, he was the seventh defenseman most nights. But when you look at that projection of what he did 2 years earlier,
It made sense.
or the two prior years, it made sense. He
Right.
was misused. The model says he was misused.
Right. And he was at what? He was at BU, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Was it BU. So BU, last time I checked, they really do attract a lot of good hockey players. So for him to be, a consistent middle defensive pair guy, and then all of a sudden the following year drop to the 7th defenseman role at a place like BU, that's going to happen to guys.
Mhm.
So let's see where he comes back, bounces back. Again, this is a guy that was a 7th round pick. No one really expects much from him at the NHL level anyway, but it just goes to show there's always going to be outliers that make you have to look further into it.
Right.
Why didn't he score 7 goals? Well, it's because he didn't get ice time. Let's see if he gets 7 goals next year. I forget where he transferred to, but
Colorado.
Was it Colorado?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get 6 or 7 goals next year. Because if he can, he's not far off from his projections. It's just someone else came in, took his job, bumped him down the roster, and he found a way to bounce back. Not a bad thing, by the way.
No, but we'll get more to Gallagher in a bit. I just want to finish off on Pelosi and say, so compare him to Jake Schmaltz, who had almost the exact same number of points in his last season in the USHL. I think they were within 2. Schmaltz went on to have a good first year in the NCAA and then fell off a cliff. You'll find him at the bottom of my rankings now. So, look, I've always spoken very highly of the USHL. I've often called it the top developmental league in the world, and I still think it is. But the USHL doesn't develop players in the way that the NCAA does or the Canadian Hockey League does. The USHL prepares them for NCAA hockey first and then the NHL. And there's they do a very, very good job of it, and why they're the best in the world. But success there doesn't mean ultimate success. So I've ranked them high, both Pelosi and Hendrickson. People think I've ranked them too low, but let's see what they do at the next level.
Yeah, and that's a fair assessment too, because again, like my question, who are you bumping down? Okay, so now you have Hendrickson 13th and Bavaro 14th. Okay, it's not a huge jump. Like, it's not something that you're you're not bumping them all the way up above Fabian Lysell, but no one is doing that. So, like, at a certain point, it's to what end are you just putting them in an order that your opinion is, like you said, would have drafted Hendrickson above Pelosi, not crying about the fact that they got both of them.
No, I'm not, but I just want to make it clear. I'm not using hindsight here. I'm not using data that's in front of me. I said it the very day They drafted both players. It's there on Dom.Hockey. You can go back and read it.
Yeah.
Very first day, I said I would have reversed the 2 picks.
Now, moving on to the next person on the list, Jackson Nelson. He's centering down in Providence, another undrafted free agent signing. You have him listed as a middle six center who brings energy, some physicality, and strong defense with a scoring touch. Slightly better than average across the board, but another big body. 220, 6'4", right shot, center.
Yeah,
All very good things.
he's got an NHL frame now. I may even be a little bit low on the compete level. It probably should be closer to 8 than 7. But again, this is a guy that's moving up to the next level, and in all honesty, I wanted to put him higher. I actually wanted to have him in my top 10, Chris. But as I just finished explaining about with Hendrickson and Pelosi, is now I have to see him at that AHL level. I really struggled with keeping him outside the top 10, but I really wanted to put him there.
Yeah, he's definitely someone I want to keep an eye on in Providence this year.
Are you there?
Because he seems like, yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. He's someone that I definitely want to keep an eye on in Providence next year because he definitely seems, especially with that frame, one of the things we've talked about with Poitras is the inability to win faceoffs based off of his size. First off,
Mm-hmm.
my first question to you is, how is Nelson at the dot?
You can't get official stats from well, I guess you can if you want to go game by game and do all the math yourself.
I ain't doing that in
You
the
can
next
do
5
that.
minutes, but
No, but
something to
he's
watch while he's in Providence. Does he have good technique at the faceoff dot?
he's the technique is there, the strength is there. Um, you know, you mentioned Patra. Patra was 58% in junior, and look what happened in the NHL. Nelson, I think, is around 54% in college, but let's see what he can do at the American Hockey League level. Certainly,
Yeah,
the strength is there.
yeah.
To just like Johnny Beecher.
Now, when you look at a guy like Nelson too, it seems also like his game is the kind of game that can transition over to a wing
Um,
if needed.
if needed, yeah. Like you talk about the Bruins, and they've got a lot of centers, a lot of centers. People are, the player I've been most asked about since I put this list out is why isn't Curtis Hall on it? Another center, and like the criteria is there for him to be on it, but he's like there's 12 centers ahead of him.
Yeah. At what point? Now, but the reason why I ask is because his game also seems like it could mesh well with a Kuntar and Beecher kind of mix.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I have to see him at the pro level
Oh yeah.
with Providence. Uh, Based on what I saw in college, I prefer him in the middle.
Okay, that's fair.
But that could change. Like there was a time I preferred Brett Harrison in the middle,
Right.
and
And
that
try,
all changed,
yeah,
right?
now you prefer him on the wing. So
Right.
let's see him. This will be his first year with the P Bruins. So let's see where it goes. And I'm open minded to it. let's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of see where he plays into. Now, next on our list, I'm sure some people will ask, "Oh, how is he the first one?" We get to our first goaltender from Providence College. You have 6'4", 209 Philip Svedback. Slightly different ratings. That'll be the first thing people notice. You have the glove, the puck handling, the calmness, rebounds, positioning instead for those rankings. But you list him here as the upside being backup goaltender who give you 25 to 30 games a season, which right now that's a win because in 3-4 years from now, you're going to need exactly that behind Jeremy Swayman. So you kind of already need it, but if Svedback can give you that, you can easily cycle through two of these guys in Swayman's next contract if you do the full 8 years. So Svedback, not signed right now, playing at Providence College. Good glove side, calmness, compete level, all above average. What do you see as biggest drawbacks? What do you see as his biggest upside?
Well, what you see is his biggest upside. To me, he regressed this year. Just he a year ago he was making saves that he needed to make, and then some that he shouldn't have made. This season, he was barely making the saves he needed to make, and that cost Providence a little bit. So he's regressed a little bit. Like I mean, when you consider that Providence College gave up so few shots this season, and his numbers actually regressed. I think Svedback a year ago was in my top 12 in the rankings. Now, obviously we have guys that have come in, newer guys like Hendrickson, Pelosi, Nelson, some of the others that have jumped him. But I think it's more his regression. And this is why I don't understand the not signing Reed Dick, because I had Reed Dick ahead of him.
Yeah, how did that change? Where was Dick on your list here?
He was in my top 10. He was in my top 10.
It's amazing how one little move can shift everybody up.
You know, I'm sure the Bruins have their reasons, and they have good, legitimate reasons. Unfortunately, they couldn't drop Svedback because they own his rights for another 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? So, I don't know. It is what it is.
And it's not like they can never work with Reed Dick again.
No, it's not, but it's highly doubtful that they would.
Yeah. Moving on, though, number 18, a name a lot of people are familiar with, playing for the Maine Mariners of the ECHL right now, right shot defenseman Ryan Mast, again, sticking with the theme of a big body defenseman, 6'5", 220, third pairing shutdown defenseman projection. He can kill penalties and transition the puck. So the kind of guy that, Wotherspoon maybe? Maybe Andrew Peak type.
What?
Not as physical, though?
He's more a Brandon Carlo type.
Okay.
A more physical Brandon. He models his, like, he's told me that he studies video of Brandon Carlo and tries to model his game after him.
Honestly, perfect.
Here's my issue. Because he was able to put points up in junior. He was able to quarterback a power play in junior. My biggest question at the time, even when he was playing in junior, I had doubts that it would translate to the pro game.
Yeah. Now,
right? Now, if you put his skating was a 5, I believe, if I remember off the top of my head.
Yep.
Okay. Magnificent backward skater. Magnificent. If I was just rating backwards skating, he'd be a 10.
Okay.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Um, he looks awkward when he's going for, but he's got speed for a guy who's 6'5". I've posted videos where he's like two lengths behind somebody and they're breaking out of their zone and he catches them. So he's got some speed, but he's just really lanky and his technique is not that great. I don't know who taught him how to skate backwards, but it's an art. It literally
Do it
is
the
an
same
art.
way he's doing it backwards. Just do it forwards.
Yeah. So that's my issue with Mast is I don't know that his offensive game translates to the pro game.
Again, though, someone that get him into dev camp, get him working within the system. I love the fact that he's in Maine. He'll get some call-ups to Providence, I'm sure. But another guy that I look at and say, working with Adam McQuaid, working with the skating coaches, this is someone that, Brandon Carlo won't be here forever.
No.
If you can transition from Carlo to Mast in that defensive shutdown pairing role, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And you would think in a perfect world, he'd be ready when Brandon Carlo's contract expires.
So
but we all
3 years away?
3 years. Yeah.
3 years, yeah. I'll take it. This year he plays in Maine. Next year and the year after he plays in Providence. That second year in Providence, you get a little bit of call up, give him a taste of the NHL to see what it's like. Honestly, putting this kid in a game in the NHL in 2 years, letting him play with Brandon Carlo, that'll be helpful.
Yeah. Again, in a perfect world, we all know it's not a perfect world, right?
Only a little bit.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, you just look down the list a little bit and you see Alec Regula there, and it's like, okay, so has Regula jumped him or what? And
do you want me to pull up Regula's card?
No, we'll get to him when we get to him.
Yeah, because between them, we just have another forward. We have another center, another one. University of Minnesota Duluth center, Cole Spicer. You have him listed as a bottom six forward that can bring some energy, forechecking and secondary scoring. Not highly rated on the PK, but on the power play, better than average. Again, we're at the 19th rated level prospect. We're not going to see a lot of 8s and 9s anymore. It's just not going to happen.
No.
But fourth round pick, 5'10", 175, left shot. Let him get through school. He's 20 years old.
Well, that's the issue, because he started out the year looking like, there's something here. There really is. And unfortunately, he was suspended the rest of the season for failing to meet his grades. So his academic, I forget what the official term that they use. So he had to sit out the rest of the year. And I know that he's working his ass off to get his grades back up so that he can go back to Minnesota Duluth for next season. And I hope he does, because Chris, honestly, it really looked like there was something there with this guy. And, the Bruins probably did well to grab him in the fourth round. And then this happened. So all those numbers that we see there on his card was based off of, I don't know, what was it, 10 games he played this season?
So this brings two questions to my mind, and the chat's kind of died down a little bit, but I'm sure someone has this thought. we're approaching 8:45 right now, so people probably put their phones down and are still listening, which is awesome. We appreciate that. Thank you, everybody who's still with us. Don't be afraid to put your questions in the chat. Even going back to the guys we've already covered, we can kind of jump around a little bit more now that we're closer to the end of the list here. But two questions that I'm sure someone out there is thinking. The first one is, with the academic eligibility ruling him out for most of the season, if he's unable to get his grades back up, what become his options to remain under control of the Bruins while still playing hockey? Can he opt to not return to the NCAA and enter and play for the Maine Mariners? Is that an option?
Yeah, that's an option. I believe he has junior eligibility for one more year, so he could go that route. He could go overseas. There would be plenty of options for him. But it's finding the right option that would make A, the Bruins happy, and B, him happy.
Right. And I don't ask the question of saying, oh, this kid should quit school and, go play for the Mariners and work it. No, I'm just curious. Genuinely, I love to see the fact that he's trying to make it work at the university.
I've been told, Chris, he's busting his ass off and that he was heartbroken when he found out his grades weren't where they were supposed to be.
And you know what, though, having been granted it was for me D3, not D1, but having been a college athlete before, when you're at that higher level, I can almost guarantee you're sitting there thinking about your career more than you are your academics. It's tough not to, especially when you've already been drafted and you have a path to the National Hockey League.
Yep.
So
but the everything about this kid says he doesn't hate school. You know who hated school? Mason Lohrei.
But you know what, though? I love the fact that you have his compete level at a 6. I almost want to say let's bump it up to a 7, simply because right now he's essentially competing with the school to actually play.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing everything, from what you're saying, everything in his power to be able to get back on the ice.
Yeah.
And so that tells me when this kid makes it back on the ice, I'm saying when, because maybe it's not with the University of Minnesota. Maybe it is Maine. Maybe it is overseas. But you know what? This kid right now, I want him to stay in our system, because once this kid gets back on the ice, that compete level is probably going to skyrocket to a 10.
Yeah.
Because he's just had his dream taken away from him because of academics.
Yep.
And so once he gets that dream back, this kid's going to do everything he can not to let it go again.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
but
that's
we're dealing in a hypothetical there. Like when it comes to something like those graphs or those charts, I need to see it before I can put it visually on the screen for everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, he could come back and flop. We don't know. But
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And I should also add, Providence would be an option for him too, Chris.
Oh, good. Hey, we got Karen jumping in. Karen is an OG watcher of the program. We've been around now, this program, in one form or another for, 4 years now. And Karen's been around since day one. So,
hi, Karen.
Shout out, Karen. I also want to shout Karen out because when they did the Winter Classic up, the most recent one, she bought me a hat. She bought me one of the winter hats. So shout out, Karen. That was awesome. She shipped it up my way. I still have it. Obviously not in 80-degree summer weather, but I got to shout her out as an original follower of the show. She still kicks around. So huge shout out and congratulations to her son, who just recently graduated as well. The other question that I had, though, I mentioned I had 2.
Mm-hmm.
When you are coming up with these grades, all right, when you're coming up with these numbers, that 6 out of 10 for the compete level, Obviously, you watch a guy like Cole Spicer multiple times throughout the year. So when you sit down to watch a University of Minnesota Duluth game and you're watching Cole Spicer, are you basically filling out one of these cards every game and then kind of, okay, so today his shot I would rank as, a 6. And then you sit down at another game and you're like, okay, this time his shot wasn't quite as good. So today I'm putting it at a 4. And then once you have 10, 11, 12, 15, whatever number of those cards with those ratings, are you then at the end of the year just kind of averaging out each rating? How does that process
Here's
work?
here's here's how I'll do it. Let's say I watch a player 15 times in a season. I will fill out a new sheet every time. And the first time I fill it, it gets entered into my computer, gets filed away, never to be seen again till the end of the season. I'll watch them the second time, third time, same process all over. Never looking back at a previous one till the end of the season. And then I've got it all set up in Excel files, right? So I'll go to a player and say, okay, I want to look up Cole Spicer. This is what I saw. And you'll find if you're being honest and you're judging without bias, Chris.
That's the hard part for a lot of people, let's be
Yeah,
honest.
it's got to be without bias. You'll find that those numbers are pretty constant all the way through. Like, for instance, okay, if I'm watching Providence and Fabian Lysell is my number 10 skater and Trevor Kuntar is my number 10 compete level guy, those are my comparables. Okay, how does Merkulov's skating compare to Lysell's? Well, Lysell's got straighter or greater straightaway speed, but Merkulov can turn on a dime more. Has got better inside edges, but Lysell's got better outside edges. All that stuff.
Whatever.
Right. It all comes into play. So you're comparing everybody to the best that team has to offer. In this case,
That's at that level. We're not
right.
comparing everybody to Connor McDavid.
Right. Although if I was comparing Lysell to Connor McDavid, I'd put Lysell at a 9.
When it comes to what?
Skating.
The skating.
The
Okay.
skating. So that's how the comparison works. But you'll find the key is block out everything else that you've seen from the player in the past and focus on this game only and without any bias. And you'll find that your scoring is going to be consistent all the way through. Sure, a guy's going to have a bad game.
Sure. Everybody's entitled to one.
Yeah.
And maybe that when you're looking at 17 scorecards and you see 6s across the board, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute, this guy dropped to 2 in this game. It's so much an outlier where you sit there and when you have connections similar to, scouts or agents or family members, once you look at it and you go, wait a minute, what the hell happened in November? You're able to reach out to a family member and be like, hey, he had a terrible game back in November, but it's such an outlier. Was there something going on in life that maybe distracted him that day? And yeah, that's the day we found out that, such and such, and okay, well, that makes sense. His mind just wasn't with the game. He tried to play through it. Didn't work.
Now, remember you and I talked about scouting a couple of months ago, and I said to you, you go to a game, pick 3 players.
Yes, and while you talk about this, I'm just going to pull this up. I pulled it from the page for you. This is the checklist. This is the form that we keep referring to. Again, if you go to Dom.Hockey, you will find this in part 4.
Yeah,
So
it's not the whole form. It's just a, a section of it. Um, but I told you, I said pick 3 players, Chris. Don't watch the game. Just watch those 3 players. The next time you go, you watch 3 different players. That's how you get rid of the bias. You don't always focus on one guy.
yeah,
Um, and like that's the key is getting rid of is trying to do it without any bias. And I know it's hard, especially like I've been a fan of Trevor Kuntar for 3 or 4 years and love his game and the way he plays. But how do I keep the bias? How do I keep that out of it when
right.
I'm sitting there? And for me, luckily, is I've been doing this for so long that it's easy enough that I can just focus on the skill set and say, okay, what's there, what's missing.
Right, and that's the hardest part for a lot of people is removing that bias. And I wanted to touch on that just to kind of give peel the curtain back a little bit, let people know kind of the process, how it goes, because some people want to get involved with it, kind of learn how to do it, that sort of thing, or at least understand it better.
Yeah,
And those are a couple areas where again, you posted this in section 4, which was your Q&A section, so that means somebody's interested. So
right.
what we try to do here is a lot more education as well. So back to the rankings, though. We only got a few more left from your list. You mentioned Alec Regula before, the right shot defenseman, again, big body, 6'4", 207, playing in Providence right now. Again, another guy you have listed, third pairing shutdown defenseman who can kill penalties and transition the puck. Sounds very familiar. And he's one of the ones that we got in that deal with Chicago to send over. If I remember correctly, he came from Chicago, or was he the
Yep.
Devils?
No, he came from Chicago in the Taylor Hall trade.
It was in the Taylor Hall trade when we salary dumped Hall. We got 2 defensemen as part of it. And this is the guy that Chicago did not want to give up.
Right. And um, Detroit had drafted him. um, and Chicago well, I can tell you Chicago wanted him bad because Jim McKellar is their head Canadian scout, and he was Regula's assistant general manager with the London Knights. Regula can play with talented players. He played with Evan Bouchard. Um, he he learned under Dale Hunter. We talked a little bit about that with Jackson Edward and how Dale Hunter prepares players for the National Hockey League. I think Alec Regula can be an NHL player, a third pairing, um, right shot defenseman who can kill penalties. He's great defensively, blocks shots. We know what his plus minus was like with Providence this season. It's too bad he got injured and the latter part of the season and wasn't available for the playoffs. But with with the Bruins acquiring Peak, who still has 2 years left on his contract, I believe.
Yeah.
It's difficult to see an opening there for Regula now.
I think, yeah, and what I was just thinking myself as you were talking there is that's where you kind of look at the re-signing of Parker Wotherspoon and kind of do a small head tilt, because now blocking Regula, you have Peak and you have Wotherspoon, then you have Regula. So I'm sure he'll come in to to training camp, play well, but at training camp you can also still trade players. So of those 3 guys, Regula and Wotherspoon and Peak, if you come into camp and you go, we really only need 2 of them because Regula is ready, teams will take calls on all 3 of them.
Yeah.
you're not going to get a 10th overall draft pick for him. But you know what? You can say you got 2 years left on Andrew Peak, but he's costing us the most. We think Regula and we think Wotherspoon can get the job done. We'd rather go younger. So let's shop Peak, and now all of a sudden you grab the interest of a team like Minnesota. You know what I mean? Someone who might be looking to add some depth on D at a cheap price. And now you snag a 4th round pick that's conditional that if they make the playoffs, you get it as a 3rd rounder instead. Like, it's not a deal that makes you sit there and jump out of your seat and cheer, but it's a deal that allows you to manage the assets that you have and kind of keep the depth. And again, based off of the cap hit, that's one that would allow you to make a better move at the deadline because you're accumulating cap space.
Right.
Karen, I do see your question about Montgomery. We will come back to that in just a minute. And then Brian says, Dom, 2 guys, Harrison and Brunet, going into their 2nd pro year. What's the outlook for them in Providence? I seen Brunet at last year's prospects camp and looks like a smooth skater with a sneaky quick shot. Thoughts on him as well as Harrison's ceiling? I know we kind of said we could jump around a little bit. Karen's chimed in and said, what do you guys think about Montgomery staying another year? I'll let you pick which one we want to go with first, and then we'll jump back in to the list.
Well, I'll answer Brian's because we've already covered it, so we can get through it quickly. I think if Harrison can get his compete level to where it needs to be, he has a solid potential 2nd line left wing upside. I don't see him as a center at the NHL level. I see him as a winger. If his compete level stays where it's at, and we see glimpses of it here and there, 3rd line left winger, again, not in the middle, but he's not going to provide a lot of offense. He needs to get that compete level up. As for Brunet, needs to work on his all-around game. He has all the offensive upside you would want in a blue liner. He can quarterback a power play, which the Bruins obviously need, but he's a few years from doing that. So right now I see him as a 3rd pairing offensive defenseman who can quarterback the power play. If he can round out his game, if you follow him and look at how he has made it where he has, you look at the path taken by what's his name? Everybody wanted him to be a Bruin at one point. Defenseman.
Been a lot of players.
It'll come to me. Played in the queue too.
I wish I could help.
Who was the guy that was going to make the Iron Man streak?
Oh, shoot! What? Now I can't think of it.
You know who I'm thinking of.
I know who you're talking about.
Follow their paths.
Comment, please. Who are we thinking of?
Oh,
we've got like 500 people watching right now. Someone's got to know this. Because I guarantee you, someone's screaming into their earpod, "It's this player, you idiots!" Take a second, put the dish down, and type it in the comments, please.
But their paths were fairly similar.
Because it went to Kessel, the Iron Man streak. And they played for like.
Why does
Kessel?
Why does Yale keep coming into my head?
All right, I'm gonna do my best to try because it's bothering me so much. NHL Iron Man streak. I gotta Google this now because we're gonna. No one's chiming in, unfortunately. Of course, they probably are enjoying the struggle. So, I guess I can't really complain about that. Keith Yandel.
Keith Yandel. There you go.
Yep.
There,
Keith Yandel.
Stefan just told us.
Google was just a little faster. 989 games.
Yeah. So, I'm not saying he's going to be Keith Yandel, but he has similar attributes that Keith Yandel did at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does. And now we're getting it, Yandel. Okay, there must be a little bit of delay on when the comments are coming in. It's funny, though, because Kessel still holds the streak at 1,064 because he's still considered active. But you know who is active right behind him? And when I say right behind him, I mean 200 and change games behind him.
Who?
Brett Burns.
Wow.
Brett Burns is at 843, and Andrew Cogliano is at 830 games.
They won't catch Kessel.
They're the only ones that are active in the top 28, other than Kessel.
Yeah. They won't catch him.
Sorry, little sidetrack here. I had to Google it, so
You know what? Yale kept popping into my head. It's like, no, it's not Yale,
but an N and a D in there too.
Yeah. So
anyway, diverting back from Yandel. So we were just talking about Regula. But next on the list, I didn't think he was actually on the list. I feel like I knew he was, but we were talking about him earlier. Former BU defender Ty Gallagher, now with Colorado College. And I love your summary here for his upside. Because of the quote-unquote lost season, unknown at this time. That's about right. That's fair.
Yeah, if you have to go back to his days with the National Development Team program, first 2 years of the NCAA, there was no doubt this guy had some upside. And then this season happened, and you wondered why he was playing 5 minutes a game. You wonder if Jay Pandolfo had something against the Bruins or whatever. Why he was playing 5 minutes a game, 3 minutes a game. Because this kid does have talent. Now, where he's at, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to add to that, that was his third year at BU. All right. First year, he played 34 games, had 16 points, and about 35 penalty minutes, was a +6. Okay, that's a freshman season. Fine.
Yep.
Year 2, he played in 40 games, 3 goals, so 2 fewer goals, but packed on another 7 assists for 21 points. So there was a small uptick in his offense, but this isn't a guy who's, he's not Brett Burns. He's not Erik Karlsson. He's not that kind of guy, but he brought the PIMS down to 24. And he was a +21. That's a huge jump.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden this past season, 37 games, so right in the middle, 5 points. So if you're dressing 7 defensemen, and let's say without even looking, let's say all 3 seasons they dressed 7 defensemen, that's where I sit there and I go, he went down the depth chart. For whatever reason, he dropped to being the 7th guy. Okay, like you said, why? Was it a coach holding a grudge? It's been known to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So what I would say is, like you called it, a lost season. Let's see. Now Jason's jumping in with Yandel as well. Let's see how he bounces back in Colorado.
Right.
Because that's all you can do. Maybe this kid has already peaked. He's fizzling out. But you know what? He's 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So let's give him a shot to bounce back because you don't need him in your lineup tomorrow. And keep in mind, he was drafted 217th overall in the 7th round. Like, this wasn't a guy that you were expecting to come in. You know, he was drafted in 2021, so 3 years ago. You were not expecting him to come in 2022 and take over for Brandon Carlo.
No,
That was
not
never
at
his
all.
path. If he gives you another year if he gives you a year in Colorado and he's back to that 15 point, honestly, I'll take a 10-point season out of him. If he plays in 30 some odd games and he's back up to 10 to 15 points, I will call that a bounce back season. Let's see what he does after that. Does he go to the AHL or does he get one more year in the NCAA? I don't care which one he does. I just want to see more progression at that point. But you got to see the bounce back year, because if he goes back into another 6-point season, well, then
He's done.
He's done.
He's not getting a contract.
Right. But what is great about that is it's completely within his control. And right now on this chart, you have a compete level of 6. Now, when you're getting 6-7 minutes a night,
It's hard.
It's hard to show any sort of compete level on a consistent basis, because you don't know where those 6 minutes are coming from. You could get 3 shifts in the offense and 3 shifts in the defense. You could get 6 shifts where you're jumping in on the fly and you're headed to the offensive zone, and then all of a sudden now you got to get back because of a turnover, and it's like, okay, so I just spent half my shift going the other direction because someone else turned the puck over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really tough to properly put these numbers in place when you have such outliers like that. So it's completely in his control, and let's see how he's going to move the needle one way or the other. So on him, let's see which way he goes.
And last year he was in my top 10.
Yeah. And which is saying something for a 7th round pick, by the way. Also picked in the 7th round, though, this past year, Casper Nason. Again, another big body, 6'4", 205, center/wing, so 4th liner, forward overall, NHL upside. It's too early, but right now a 4th liner brings some energy with a lead shot, plenty of developing to do. Now, again, this is a guy who's 20 years old, was drafted last season, and he's in the J20 league. So, like,
well, he's going to the NCAA for next season.
Okay,
I forget which.
Up to see where.
Is it Miami, Ohio? I'm not sure, but here's a guy who can play all 3 positions. Actually played as a right shot, played the left wing most of the season. He got off to a very, very slow start. As a matter of fact, he didn't reach what I had projected for him because of that slow start. But then he missed half a dozen, 7 games to an injury and came back on fire and finished basically the second half on pace to hit what my model predicted for him. So it was nice to see the turnaround. I wasn't impressed with the slow start. This is a guy who's following in the footsteps of Oscar Yelwick and Donslok Mellis in the J20, and then coming over to the NCAA. So it'll be a transition year for him. I think it's going to be tough for him to make it to the NHL at this point. But we'll see what happens when he comes to North America.
Yeah, again, the key is he's 20 years old. Let's not act like his career is over because of one bad year. And I'm not saying you are.
No.
What I do like about what I see, and based on your projections too, like you said, missing time to an injury is going to affect the projections. But you had projected 26 goals, 24 assists. He ended with 19 goals and 17 assists. So the totals were off. But what I like is he does both. He's not just a guy
Yeah.
who scores goals. Not the best comparison of what I'm talking about, but like you think Alex Ovechkin, you think goal scorer. You don't think, oh, this guy's going to come out with 45 assists. You
Right.
think, Austin Matthews, you think, 60 goals and 40 assists. I like the fact that this guy's almost right down the middle, even.
As a winger.
So some good things to be excited about. But again, another guy that taken in the 7th round, that taken within the last couple seasons, needs time. Let's let him marinate. We don't have to be rushing these guys because, again, it's a guy like Nason who helps those national guys who rank prospect pools. Nason's the kind of guy that helps them justify, this is why Boston has a 28th overall system. Okay, fair, but Nason has a lot of upside. Gallagher has a lot of upside. With time for them to find and hit their stride, let's see where these guys in such a terrible prospect system are in 2 years, in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because what else does Boston do? They develop players. They take imperfect guys and they elevate them. So when you have a bad prospect pool and it's justified by saying, well, upside. Yeah. Well, it's up to the coaches to fucking tap into that upside. So that's why they have a guy like McQuaid running player development.
Right.
We're almost done the list. So we'll get to Andre Gasso of Boston College, BC guy. Again, another 7th round pick. I'm sensing a theme here. Just saying, big body, 6'4", 205, left shot forward, bottom 6 who can provide energy, forecheck, and some offense, can move up if he works on his skating. And his skating is listed at a 5. So strong compete level, strong physicality. Watch some BC. Look for this kid.
Yeah, skating is going to be the issue for him. He had a really, really good freshman season. My model actually projected for him to put up similar or better points than Oscar Yelwick, and he fell way short. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so
I do actually.
Okay.
I still have that. I told you I have all these in front of me. You had Gasso predicting 14 goals, came up a little shy with 12, 24 assists. That's kind of where the discrepancy came up. Actual assist count was 17. Yelwick, though, 10 goals, finished with 13, 21 assists projected, finished with 29. So there was a disparity overall of 29 points versus 42. They were projected to still be about 7 apart, 38 versus 31. So, that's
Well,
what it is. 7 points a chasm. No, it's different.
Well, it's different because they were line mates for the majority of the season. So why does one go way up and the other one go down, Chris? Especially when you've got the same centerman between you for almost the entirety of the season. So you have to
time on the power play that Yelwick didn't.
No, they both got PP time.
Okay.
So
I'm just trying to find ways for the disparity. That's all.
Well, that's just it. You have to say to yourself, well, why the disparity? And you start to look back and you start to read your notes and you think, okay, skating's been an issue. It's not the shot. It's not the compete level. They've got the same line mates. So can it be just skating? And the answer in this case is yes.
That's fair. The skating, can hold you back if you can't get to the puck. If you're, if you're falling because can't, you're trying to make a sharp turn that you're just not capable of making. It'll hold you back. So I do see a couple other comments jumping in. We only have a couple more, so we'll jump through these last couple. and then we'll get caught up on all the comments. Then there's a few that aren't on your list that I want to bring up just because I know some people will have questions about them, and some people will probably follow up on the pod as well for that. So on the list next at 24 is Mason Langenbrunner, Harvard defenseman, another big, tall guy, 6'3", 194. You have him listed as a third pairing shutdown defenseman who can kill penalties and transition the puck. Everything is a little bit better than average, except for the power play. A 5th round pick. I mean, watch Harvard. He's fun to watch. That's for sure.
Like he can skate. He's got some skills. This guy is really, really green. It's going to take some time with him. The problem is that he was on such a terrible team that you could see he was. The reason why his compete level is higher than most on the team is you can see he was working his ass off to make up for a lot of the deficiencies that the team had on the back end. And, it's not Ray Bork. Can't do it all himself, right? And
no, there's only one Bork.
Yeah. So
he's also 21 years of age too. So
So
honestly, I look at it and I go, at 21 years old, he's kind of right where he should be for someone that's not, for a 5th round pick. He's right where he should be, or where you want him to be. Let me rephrase.
And I think I should have probably, Chris, if I'm being honest with myself, has probably had his skating at a 7. 6 might be a little bit low, but we're not perfect.
I was going to say, is that skating moving up to a 7 versus a 6? Is that going to bump him up one spot, put him above Gausseau?
No.
I was going to say maybe one spot, but again, at that point, you're picking up a penny when you have $100 bill in your pocket,
right?
Like it's more insignificant than it seems. Let's see. Just keeping an eye on the comments, so we'll come back to them. Any other thoughts on Langenbrunner at the moment?
No.
So on the 25th guy, this is a guy that if they can bring out the talent or work on the talent and develop it, another big body, 6'6", 220, 7th rounder, Christian Kostadinsky, left shot defenseman. You have him listed as third pairing shutdown defenseman who can bring some nastiness and be hard to play against. And what really stands out is that physicality at 9 and that skating at 4.
And you know what? And you saw him at development camp last year, Chris.
I will never forget that moment.
But the thing is he's done the work and improved his skating, and it's still a 4. Like, you can see the improvement in the skating, but that's how far he's got to go.
I was going to say, that makes me ask the question, how bad was it?
Yeah, so we don't even know where he's playing next year. There were rumors he was coming over to the NCAA along with Nason, but that's not happening. He's got another year of junior eligibility in the J20. He even dressed and was on the bench for Lunda, I believe it is, in the Swedish Hockey League playoffs because they were short of defensemen, but they couldn't put him over the boards because he didn't have a contract. They had a contract waiting behind the bench in case they needed him so he could sign it.
Story.
So,
I can just imagine him looking over, Coach, I need your pen.
It would have been so funny. But
just the viral moment of him taking, swinging the gloves off, grabbing the paperwork, signing it. Give me my gloves. Give me my gloves.
Yeah. So, the only thing I can think of is like if his skating was NHL level, and I'm picturing a couple of years down the road of him and Jackson Edward on the blue line.
Oh my
saying
God.
to Matthew Tkachuk, yeah, you try and get near Swayman now, or Sasha Barkov, or
Sam Bennett. Go ahead.
Sam Bennett or
Punch my
Reinhardt.
captain again.
Come on, let's go.
That's when
You
you
know,
just wish one of them was Russian, just to have that little extra nastiness.
yeah,
Go
like
ahead, punch my captain
Jackson
again.
Jackson Edward, like in Maroon's case, asking Kachuk or Reinhardt or any of them to fight and them turning him down. There's no qualms about it with Edward. It's like, fuck you. I'm dropping the gloves. We're going.
I was gonna say, I feel like Jackson Edwards would be asking for forgiveness from the league, going, "Please don't suspend me. He
Yeah.
deserved it."
Yeah.
So
He would have
that
gone right after him.
that's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, yeah, if he was more ready and you needed a almost like a mentor, that's when I would sit there and go, please bring Pat Maroon back to mentor Jackson Edward, just so he knows when and how to do it.
Yeah.
1 year, that's all I need. So, and then to round out, I don't know why 26 was your number, but that's okay. You mentioned him earlier, Jake Schmaltz. Another 7th round pick, another 6'2" guy. You have him listed as a bottom 6 shutdown center who will bring little offense, compete level 5, physicality at 2 jumps out. Guy plays in the NCAA for North Dakota. I mean, you really went to 26 to include him?
Yeah. It's because he fits the criteria, right? So I had to. But here's a guy who showed offensive promise in the USHL, as I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Pelosi. Had a good freshman year with North Dakota, and then his offense just fell off a cliff. In fairness, he's turned into a good defensive centerman. He's okay on draws. But the thing is that enough these days to earn an NHL contract?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that too is going to be determined on what it looks like when he's trying to make that jump.
Well, he's only got 1 year left, so
Oh, that's the tough part. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting thing to see. You really, with someone like that, as we've said before, you really got to see what this next year brings for him and see. It's also going to be important for a guy like that. Actually, I'm going to pull the card back up real quick to see which one of these goes what direction. If his skating stays a 6, but all of a sudden his compete level's now at a 7, and his physicality has jumped to a 5, and his penalty kill is now a 7 as well. Like, okay, now you really have the makings of a shutdown centerman. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
You're absolutely right.
you're developing a Thomas Noshik kind of guy.
Right.
And there's a role for that. Even as a 7th round guy at 192 overall, like, again, we're talking about a kid who's under 25 years of age, 23, if I am reading and doing math correctly in my head at the moment. It's just, you can't give up on the kid. Just see where it goes. Because Noshik didn't bring you a lot of offense. Sean Thornton didn't bring you a lot of offense. Gregory Campbell was not known for his goal scoring. His best moment in a Bruins uniform was not a goal.
No, it wasn't. But the same token is like, how many guys do we have for that position already?
Correct. How many of them are going to stick around in the organization in that time frame? Again, he's got 1 year left. So how many of these guys are going to still be here next year? How many of them can you look to trade? So on and so forth. That's why when people sit there and go, "Oh, Don Sweeney sucks because of a draft from 8 years ago," shut the fuck up. First of all, there's way more to the GM position than just a draft and making trades. Like, any of us can sit here and pull up Cap Friendly and be like, this is fucking easy.
Yeah. Okay.
Guess what? I can kick on my PS4, pull up NHL 24 and be like, this is fucking easy. Oh, they didn't take that trade. Let me just throw in a 7th round pick and balance the scale. Forced trade. Fuck that. This is easy. That's not how it works in the real world.
Well, in some people's world, it is.
Yeah, not the 32 people's worlds who actually do the job. But let's
Yeah.
put it that way. So to get caught up on a couple comments here, with the Bees likely to yield some free agents versus hockey trades, Linus aside, how committed will they be to restocking some picks in this year's draft?
Well,
I think it all depends on who's picking up the phone and what they're asking for.
yeah.
Because again, some of these guys that we've talked about, you mentioned the guy earlier, Curtis Hall. You're probably not doing much with him. So if a team is willing to give you a 6th round pick or a 7th round conditional pick for him, fucking take it. Is it great that
Exactly.
is it great that you get a 7th round pick? No. But no team is realistically going to look at your situation with Curtis Hall and be like, "Yep, we'll give you a 1st round pick."
Yeah, like it's not happening. Let's remember Curtis Hall's already been traded at the AHL level.
Right. Now, here's the thing though. If you trade Curtis Hall, you get a 7th round pick and you take a guy like Ty Gallagher, who we were just talking about, or Christian Konstadisky,
Or Jackson Edward.
or Jackson Edward. Guess what? You've made an upgrade because you were doing nothing with Curtis Hall anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You might not do anything with Jackson Edward. That may not pan out. However, at least you tried.
Right.
You went from a guaranteed dollar to, hey, you know what? We might get $5 out of this.
Yeah, exactly. Like
So,
to me, Jackson Edward is a top 10 prospect for the Boston Bruins.
yeah. Karen says just hopefully with the offseason practices and training, they will get better and hopefully show us something. I think next year is going to be another year where people underestimate what the team can do. I don't think I'm going to project them to win the division again, but let me see what the roster looks like coming into the season.
Yeah.
I always thought it was funny because no one thought they were going to be this good. No, a lot of people just underestimated them. So I think they're going to be underestimated again, but they might take that step back that people were expecting to see this season. And then Karen is asking, so is it true we aren't going to have an alternate? I presume she's referring to a jersey. I haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard anything either.
All right. I'll have to look into it, Karen. I'll let you know if there's anything going on with the jersey uniforms and stuff like that. And then BG411, Sweeney does a great job on re-signing guys to good contracts. He's always been good at that. That's why I really don't mind that he's working on the Swayman contract. Shit, I bet you how much you want to bet New York wishes they could call him and be like, "Hey, can you just work the deal for us for Shesterkin?"
Would you guys be surprised to hear that Evan Gold does most of the contract negotiations?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, so he does.
I'd be willing to bet Evan Gold is one of the highest paid executives that's not a general manager.
I'd be surprised if he's not. I would.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure he makes a pretty penny compared to a lot of people at his level that do similar responsibilities.
I would think that they'd have to, Chris, because I'm sure this guy is getting opportunities and calls to go elsewhere. And
I don't think Carolina picked up the phone and went, "Would you make him available? Would he want to come?" That's the thing is like maybe he just doesn't want to do it. Maybe he doesn't want to leave Boston, and that's okay. I'm happy with that, but it doesn't mean you use that as leverage to fuck him on a contract.
Exactly. You got to pay him. You got to pay him accordingly.
Right. So we've gone through your list of prospects, and I get it. Some of these guys really just didn't qualify for your list based off of the parameters that you set forth, which is totally fine. Some of them we've already talked about. But a guy like Roman Bichkov, am I saying that right?
Bichkov.
I don't know. I kind of like
Russia.
better. But playing over in the KHL, defenseman, I'm not sure a lot of people are going to be familiar with this kid. Another Flyer kid that they took in the 5th round, left shot defenseman. Let me see. It's 5'11", 181. Sounds like he's pretty good with the puck overall. I mean, is this someone that, again, we all know that it's tough to get players out of Russia that
No,
we might not see him for a while?
he's a bust.
Really?
Yeah, and he's not playing in the KHL. I think he's played 5 games in the KHL. He couldn't crack the roster of now his 3rd KHL team. He's never been able to crack a KHL roster. He was playing in the VHL last season or this past season for the most part. Um, because it's funny if you watched him at the World Juniors in what year was it? I forget what year it was, but um, it looked like he had some promise. And the Bruins Russian scout, forget his name now, probably went to bat for him. And I'm sure PJ saw him at the World Juniors and thought, yeah, there's something there, but just never materialized.
All right. Let's see. We also have someone that Providence fans will probably be a bit more familiar with. Tall, a bigger body again, 6'2", 201, left shot defenseman Michael Callahan, from Massachusetts native in Franklin. He was a 5th round pick as well, but he was selected by the Coyotes. He's been in Providence for a couple seasons after playing in Providence College. I mean, decent numbers as far as being a defenseman, 70 games, 17 points. He's wearing a letter now. He wore the C for Providence College for 3 years. So, what do you see in this kid, if anything? A kid. He's 24. I know some people have mentioned him having a shot to potentially make the club.
I don't see it anymore. I don't. By the way, another reclamation Arizona Coyotes draft pick, him and Farinacci, right?
I mean, if you hit on one of them, it's a win.
Right. But, we have to remember as fans that they also have to ice an American Hockey League team, and that's Providence. I could see Callahan getting time maybe as an injury replacement, but I don't see him as a full-time NHLer. I really don't.
Looking at his production, I mean, I get it. He's a defenseman, but still, just running through 10 points, 41 games freshman season, and then he goes to 28 points in 34 games when he gets the C, 14 points, 25 games, 14 points in 38 games. That's all in the NCAA. Then 2 and 15, 8 and 55, and 17 and 70. It's like, okay, yeah, the offense is coming back around a little bit, but like this just screams to me career. I don't want to say 4A guy just because it's not even there at the American Hockey League level, but a veteran American Hockey League guy that you want to have in the system because clearly there's a leadership factor there. There's a
Yeah.
drive factor there. There's something there that makes you go, when some of our other guys come in on the younger side and they're playing in Providence, we want them playing with him.
Tommy Cross.
Yep. That great example.
Yep.
He and every once in a while you'll call him up and give him an attaboy game, a thank you for helping down there.
Yep.
But if someone else comes and they're like, "Oh, we're going to take him off of waivers because you have to put him back through waivers." Okay, thank you for your service. Have a nice day. Like you're not losing sleep over him. At least that's what I read to it. Again, another guy down in Providence, Dan Renouf. I see very similar Seems like the offense is dropping off, but there's a little something there. They gave him the A. He's been up and down with, got teams like Detroit, Colorado, but I mean, he just seems like a career AHL kind of guy.
Yeah, he's a UFA too, right?
Maybe. I mean, he's already
Yeah.
30. So at the age of 30, you sit there and you go, well, no, I think he's entering unrestricted free agency, but you just kind of look at him and go, he is what he is.
Yep.
He's not bad, but
No, but he's not going to be on the NHL roster. He
right.
might get one game.
If you're his agent, you sit there and go, hey, Chicago, hey, San Jose, you guys need players. I've got one for you. Like, let's see. Quinn Olson also played in Providence, 2019 third round selection. So third rounders you'd like to think have some upside, but spent some time in the ECHL last year, coming out of University of Duluth, Minnesota Duluth.
Wasn't offered a contract. His rights expire August 15th.
I don't see him offering a contract.
No, it's disappointing because he came out of the Alberta Junior Hockey League and with some promise of offensive abilities. Spent 4 years in college, never materialized, not to the point that it should have. Decided to go back for the fifth year, the COVID year, and it still didn't materialize and never got offered a contract other than the ECHL contract. I mean, the Bruins didn't even offer him an AHL contract. So
I was going to say, someone that really seems to have been hurt by the potential bounce back of the COVID season that just never materialized there. And then also, I think, out of contract as well, Joey Abate, 25-year-old winger, last year with Providence, 13 points, 53 games, just seems to be, pretty much out of chances with the Bruins.
I'm not sure why the Bruins signed him midway through the season to an NHL contract.
Could they have just needed the body? I don't know.
I don't know.
Providence?
They had him on an AHL contract, so
interesting. That does kind of make you wonder. And then they also have, he's not listed on my list, Bischel. I knew I was going to forget the name, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Bischel on the AHL contract, Bussy, DiPietro, and Kaiser. Everybody has questions about the goaltending because of Allmark and Swayman needing a new deal. We talked about Svedback earlier, but Kaiser, I want to talk about him a little bit. DiPietro is now seeming to have the inside edge to be the number 2 over Bussy. Now, maybe that's just because he's the one with the contract year, but, what do you see different between Bussy, DiPietro, Kyle Kaiser? We'll put an asterisk. We'll pin that for a minute. But Bussy and DiPietro, let's start with those guys.
Well, yeah, I like Bussy over DiPietro because of the size thing. On the other hand, like I don't know that I've ever seen a goalie. And you gotta remember, I watched DiPietro for a number of years in the Ontario Hockey League. So this isn't something just new or recency bias. I've never seen a goaltender who is unwilling to give up on a puck like DiPietro. Like it doesn't matter. This guy will do whatever it takes to stop a puck.
Are you saying his compete level is a 10?
I would say it's a 9.
Okay.
I go back to this size thing, and we talked several minutes ago about the bias thing, right, Chris? And I look at UC Saros and think, yeah, we really shouldn't have a size bias.
And yet we do.
Yet we do, because when you're doing this job, you have to in a way predict what NHL teams want and what they're looking for. And we all know when it comes to goaltenders, it's size, unless you're UC Saros.
Yeah.
Okay, we go back to the Trent Frederick draft, and there's a fellow there available when the Bruins picked Trent Frederick by the name of Alex DeBrincat. Get Alex DeBrincat dropped in the draft because of the size bias.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're asking me, Chris. I would have to go with what I think the Bruins want, and that's Bussy in the NHL, DiPietro in the AHL coming up if there's an injury.
See, it's funny that you mentioned the size because, like, DiPietro's listed at 6 foot 201. Bussy's listed at 6'4", 227. It doesn't sound like a huge difference. 4 inches in height, and what is that? 227 minus 200. You're talking 26 pounds difference
Yeah.
in weight. And for me to old me, you know what I mean? Like that's really not that much different because it doesn't affect my day-to-day life all that much. I might have to duck under a door a little more if I'm 6'4" versus 6 foot.
Okay, but picture this: down in the butterfly, six
Yep.
foot four, or hugging up against the post. Who covers more net, the 6 foot four
Six
guy or
foot
the
four guy.
6 foot? Right.
Right. That's the thing is the 6'4" guy. The the question, I guess, is the guy who's 6 foot 201, if he's got a better glove, better rebound control, and deflects pucks to the corner and away from good rebound opportunities, if he does that significantly better than the 6'4" guy, why does the size matter? I get exactly what you're saying. It's bias, it's preference.
It's extreme bias, and I don't know when it all changed. Um,
I
like I really don't know when it all changed. Like I mean, I can go back to the Leafs with Alan Bester and Ken Reggett uh, as smaller goalies. Uh, and then it all seemed to change. So we're looking at the late 70s.
Yeah, and to your point, the question is why did it change? What caused the change? And is it something that we just kind of look at and go, yeah, I prefer it so much that I have blinders on?
Was it maybe when Buffalo brought in Darren Pupa? I seem to recall him being a big goaltender, and he won the Calder.
Maybe. Let's see. I'm just trying
I'm
to. I'm just trying to pull up. Unfortunately, you have to go into player profiles to like get an idea of of a player's size. But also, I mean, when you think about it too, like drafting a goaltender is always, I mean, it's a crapshoot.
yeah. Uh,
I mean, I just randomly pulled up the 2016 draft, and I would say they got it right in the sense that Philly took the first goaltender off the board. Talent wise, they got it right. Person wise, that's left to
Different
be,
story. Yeah.
yeah, harder heart. But Gustafson went third off the board. Joseph Wall went in the third round, first goalie in the third round. Connor Ingram was a third rounder, and then beyond that, none of these other guys, you know what I mean? They haven't done much. You know, the Devils 105 drafted Evan Cormier, played 2 seasons, no games. Like it just, as we say, goaltenders are voodoo.
They are, and it's I don't know if we'll ever see a day again when the goaltender goes number one overall.
I honestly don't think we will. And it's funny because if you, they always say when you're growing up, become a left-handed pitcher, because left-handed pitchers are such a premium that
Yeah,
they make a shit ton of money. All right, become a left-handed specialist. Honestly, if you want to make a lot of money in the hockey world, learn how to scout goaltenders.
yeah. I'll tell you, if a goalie ever goes number one overall again, I hope I'm around to watch his career.
Oh, this is funny. All right, I just flipped over 2019 draft. Do you know who the first goaltender selected was?
2019,
2019. He went 13th overall.
Askarov, was it not?
No, I think he was the
Oh,
following year.
2019.
I'll give you a hint. Florida took him.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think who it was now. Oh my God. Okay, who was it?
Spencer Knight.
Spencer Knight.
And so 3 seasons, 57 games played. In the second round, Carolina at 36 overall took Kochetkov. And right after that, the Senators selected Mad Sogard. Now, fast forward, you have a goaltender selected at 59 by Minnesota, never played. Buffalo, 67. That goalie never played. LA, 87. Goalie never played. Couple other ones were picked in there by Tampa and Edmonton. 1 season, 1 game, and 0 games in 1 season. To scroll all the way down, there was, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goalies in the 3rd round total, 5 goalies in the 5th round total. All 10 of them combined for 1 game. In the 6th round, Vancouver selected 156, Artur Shilovs.
Yeah.
Now, he's listed at only having played 9 games in 4 seasons, but those were all this year. And the playoffs aren't going to count on here.
Right.
However, after that, 2 more goalies in the 6th round, 0 games. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 goalies in the 7th round, all collected for 0 games. And at 214 overall, the 214th selection was made by Calgary. He's played 18 games in 3 seasons and is considered one of the best goaltending prospects in the American Hockey League. It's Dustin Wolf.
Yeah.
So you had Dustin Wolf finish the draft and Spencer Knight start the draft for goalies.
Amazing, isn't it?
And they were 201 picks apart from each other.
Amazing.
And basically in the middle, you've had Shilovs, Sogard, and Kochetkov, and nothing else.
It just goes to show, right?
I don't think I could have picked a better draft at random that proves how voodoo goaltending is. And so when people
and you look at the Bruins, okay. So Bussy was never drafted, signed as a free agent. Bischel was never drafted, signed as a free agent, albeit an American Hockey League contract. Kyle Kaiser was never drafted, signed as a free agent.
And DiPietro was a 3rd round pick.
DiPietro was a 3rd round pick of the Canucks, who they acquired in a trade. So the Bruins, with the exception of, the Bruins never drafted any of their goaltending prospects.
Yeah,
The only one they did, they just let walk.
that's kind of funny. uh, and the funny thing with DiPietro too, I say funny, but like in 2020, 2021, he played a grand total of 4 games because of the COVID season. They
Hmm.
refused to send him to the American Hockey League, and they had him as their 3rd guy on the taxi squad, so
Hmm.
he didn't play. Like that tanked his overall stock. That's why you were able to get him in the deal for Jack Studnicka. Like, let's
Hmm.
be honest, you were not giving up a boatload to get him.
No, I was surprised Vancouver gave up either of the pieces for Jack.
Yeah, I don't even know. Maybe someone smoked something that day and just said you got a
I
deal.
I don't know, man. It's
But I want to see these 2 guys go head to head in camp because
um you DiPietro and Bussy.
absolutely, I want to see them duke it out for that final spot, that backup spot, because one of them's going to get it,
Hmm.
and with that
Well,
drive, that compete level, DiPietro can outbattle him.
yeah.
And I do think you could potentially squeak one of them through waivers if you waive them at the perfect time.
I think Bussy's going to be hard to get through waivers. I really do.
I could see one of them getting moved on draft day.
Yeah, which begs the question, why not sign Dick?
I don't know. Maybe there's a goalie in this draft that they like better than Reed Dick.
Yeah, but there's no guarantee you're going to get them.
No, no, absolutely. I genuinely couldn't tell you why not sign Reed Dick. I don't know. I can't think of a good reason. I'm sure it's a good reason if they explained it, but I got nothing on that one. So anyway, um, we've been at this for almost 3.5 hours now, which is
Yes.
always a lot of fun. I think the last time we did a marathon show like this was trade deadline, um, which is always fun. Those ones are
Hmm.
great. Maybe it was free agency. I don't know. We do these every once in a while. This one's been awesome going through basically anybody not on the NHL roster. Did we miss anybody?
Oh, I'm sure there's a couple that didn't fit the category that we missed. Um,
Oh,
like
I guess
I had people ask me like, why isn't Curtis Hall on the list? Well, I answered that. Why isn't Justin Brazeau on the list? Look, I'll say this about Justin Brazeau because people are talking about Jake DeBrusk entering his prime, and the Bruins got to pay him to keep him around and this and that. Justin Brazeau is a year younger than Jake DeBrusk. So Justin Brazeau is entering his prime as well. Uh,
yeah,
thing is he's only played a dozen NHL games, so um, there's that.
yeah. I would take that argument and say if this is the best that you're going to get out of Brazeau, can't you find better for the same cost?
Yeah, I don't know.
So, like, I
So
don't hate Brazeau. I'm not trying to shit all over Justin Brazeau, but to your point, he's entering his prime. He's 26 years old right now, and he's played 19 NHL games. He's
yeah,
played well, but for a cap hit of 775, you can probably do better. You just got to get
yeah.
your scouts on it. That's all. I think the only person we really didn't dive much on, we mentioned him, and then we got off on a goaltending tangent, was Kyle Kaiser, but he's an RFA right now.
Group 6 UFA, I think.
Oh, Group 6.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm pretty
so
sure he's Group 6 now.
I don't know. Someone's gonna grab him. He's got
Uh,
talent, but
I think the Brewers should keep him around. Like,
yeah,
ideally, you want Bichel in Maine not in Providence.
Yeah.
Okay. If one of Bussy and DiPietro are in the NHL, then who's going to be the backup to the other at the AHL level? Unless they're going to bring in a veteran backup at $1 million a year.
Yeah. And I mean, there's plenty of guys that can pull that role. It just, I don't know. It's going to be interesting because right now the only two that you actually have on a contract for next year are DiPietro and Olmark.
Right.
Which is funny because I don't hate that combination at the NHL level right now. Like if you couldn't get a deal done with Swayman and Bussy tells you to pound sand and you have to go into next season with Olmark and DiPietro, you should still feel good.
I wouldn't feel great. No.
I said good.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to Linus Olmark and Swayman getting that taken care of first. Karen's got it right here. Got to put the phone on the charger. I'll catch up with her later on the jersey thing. But this has been awesome. It's a lot of fun. I will edit this down a bit to release it as a pod. So, we'll probably do 2 parts on it. Yeah, I want to thank everybody who's been tuning in. We've had a lot of great questions and comments and thoughts. And I don't know what we're going to do next week for the show. We've covered literally every prospect. And the Bruins really are at a standstill until something happens.
Oh, I think we might hear some news this weekend, Chris.
Okay. I would love that because then it makes doing the show a lot easier.
Now,
But
when do the Oilers Panthers play?
they start tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, but tomorrow,
Um,
Monday, and then they
I
have 2 days off, right?
I will check right now.
Yeah, I know they have 2 days off for travel this series.
So they play tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then Sunday is a day off. Then they play Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then they have Tuesday and Wednesday off. And they
Yeah.
play Thursday. All right. Looks like every game is going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Why don't we do Tuesday night?
That works for me. We'll do Tuesday, 6:30. It won't be another 3.5 hour episode.
No.
That one will cut back to our usual hour-ish. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. You guys made this a lot of fun. And
Yes, thank you, everybody.
what we may be able to do as well is push out like a mailbag and answer some questions on next week's pod as well. Just kind of whatever people want to ask, we can add that into hopefully some news that breaks over the weekend. And yeah, I'm out when it comes to anything else to talk about tonight. You got anything?
No, nothing. Well, there was a report out of Vancouver that the Canucks are looking to extend Lindholm and Zadorov, and that they feel it's possible to get both of them done.
Okay. All right. I don't want to get upset about not getting and not landing Elias Lindholm until I see what his dollar is.
Yeah.
I want to see the contract before I sit there and go, oh, I wish we got him.
Well,
Because
rumor is 7 times 7.
yeah, see, I don't hate the contract, but between him and Swayman, you've eaten up almost $15 million. And you haven't filled all but one hole. Like, to me, I sit there and I go, I wish 6'5", 6'7", 7'5". You know what I mean? Like, I want to keep it sub 7. If it's 7x7, I wouldn't lose sleep over it, but I'm also not going to sit here and cry because we lost out on him.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are, because my understanding is he enjoys Vancouver. He's liked it ever since he got there. There's a heavy movement from the team, from the players on the team for him to stay. So you might not have been able to get him at 7-7. You might have had to get him at 7x8. In which case, that extra $7 million to me over that extra $1 million AAV, not sure I wanted to go there.
I don't think so either.
So if that's what it comes out to, and you had to go to 7x8, I'm not upset. That's all. So otherwise, we will hope for some breaking news this weekend. And my final thought is go Bees.
Yeah, go